OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Right, a very good morning to you. Welcome along this Tuesday morning. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It's Ger Eoin with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. We're on Twitter. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Wherever you're watching us or listening to us this morning, you're very welcome along. If you're somewhere around the world and you'd like to say hello to somebody, then feel free. We will be a happy receptacle for all your messaging. And just as the Sky Sports studio was last night, Owen, the receptacle of the messaging that Mauricio Pochettino wants Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's job or any of the other good jobs that are out there, but there aren't that many other good jobs out there. So, Ole, move over, buddy.
Well, that's the first question, isn't it? What are the other jobs that he could potentially be looking at? If you're going to a Sky Sports studio, you're broadcasting to a British audience, there is no other job other than the Manchester United job that you could possibly be interested in. He looked good. He had his hair grown out. He looked like a man who didn't quite belong in a suit. That's the first thing that struck me last night, that he definitely belonged in some sort of checked shirt, reading a book at the back of some lodge in Spain or something. That's definitely what I had in mind for that sort of looking man. He didn't need to I think that he didn't need to put himself in the shop window last night, or at least he felt he didn't need to do that, because one of the interesting things from his tone last night was that he feels like he's been ready for management for quite some time now. This isn't like an arrival by Pochettino, an arrival back on the scene where he's like, right, I've done my vacation now, I'm now ready to manage again. The way he was talking, he's like, yeah, I've been ready for quite some time. Yeah,
but hang on, his agent has decided that now is the time for his arrival, because we have heard nothing about what he's been doing. We've heard he's been back in Argentina, you know, studying up or whatever, you know, and it turns out he's been having the crack, and fair play to him. You know, this rich man has had a long holiday while the rest of the world has been slowly and having an existential crisis. He's been, I guess, reading books and swimming and drinking wine and watching football on TV. And I think now very much it is a coming out party for the next period of his career. Certainly his agent has now made it official. The race is on. Which of you super clubs, because we're only talking about the super clubs here, folks, which of you super clubs wants Mauricio Pochettino? And that ups the ante. Like, that's the point is whether or not he was ready a couple of months ago. The ante has been upped. If you want Pochettino, come and get me, baby.
It's kind of ridiculous if this is the moment that kicks Manchester United into action, though, isn't it? Is it not? Like, I mean, if you're recruiting actively for a manager, which you assume Manchester United have been, then would you not have found this information out for yourself rather than Ed Woodward flicking between channels, like, oh, Bake Off, put on a bit of the news, Sky Sports, oh, there's Mauricio Pochettino, what's he saying? Oh, look, he's actually available to manage. Let me pick up my phone and ring his agent. I'm not sure if it actually works like that. Like, surely there have been conversations that have happened before this if Manchester United want him to be his manager.
Yes, now, but I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. Oh no, it's nice. Keep calling. I'll go out with you sometime, but not ready.
He has been ready. Like,
yeah, but his agent, he has not had that call with Ed Woodward direct. There's an intermediary whose job it is to make. Well, Mauricio, you know, he was hurt by the way that Daniel Levy treated him. He didn't have enough control. What's that, Ed? You're going to give him no control? Yeah, call me back later. Whereas all of a sudden, and this isn't just to Manchester United, it's to every super club that's out there. So Zinedine Zidane and Thomas Tuchel and everywhere else where there is a club that thinks of itself as being a super club, they're going, Mauricio Pochettino's on Sky last night. He's getting a lot of play. Do we want this guy? We don't want this guy. Do we? Maybe we do. Bring him up there and see how much it's going to be. Ask him for his top 10 transfer targets. And all of a sudden, the game starts.
They are the two other options, Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid. So Tuchel is into the final year of his contract, and Pochettino described playing at the Bernabeu as being baptised when he played there with Tottenham a couple of years ago, or managed there, I should say. So, like, these are the two big vacancies that could come up. Tuchel could go on to bigger and better things. Paris Saint-Germain could get sick of him, and who knows what's going to happen at Real Madrid. So I think it's a three-horse race. Go back
to the bit where you said that Ed Woodward's not sitting there watching GBBO and flicking over and seeing Pochettino. Ed Woodward thought Bastian Schweinsteiger was a great signing. He did. He thought, wow, you're going to see that name. His exact quote was, he's going to see that name and it's going to be, oh, wow, on the team sheet. Wow. I mean, like, I don't know, this multi-billion-dollar enterprise is not always run on the basis of analytics and absolutely amazing quality forensic information. Sometimes it's run on hunches and the notepaper in a hotel room. You know, who knows?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's been a good Manchester Evening News piece done in the last 24 hours just about the history of Pochettino and his flirtations with Manchester United, and there's just a good reminder of the lunch that Ferguson had with Pochettino a few years ago, that after Jose Mourinho was linked with Manchester United, Alex Ferguson was so horrified by the prospect of Jose actually managing at Old Trafford that he got out in front of the story and he rang up Poch and said, listen, we got to go for a luncheon, baby. And they did that, and they were pictured conveniently emerging from said luncheon together in a failed political endorsement for Mauricio Pochettino. You'd wonder if the Manchester United board looked at that and they said, screw you, you can't tell us what to do. And they still had their back up about that a little bit. I don't know. I think they shouldn't, because I think Pochettino is a fantastic manager. And any Manchester United fan who wasn't salivating at the statistics that Jamie Carragher produced last night probably isn't a proper Manchester United fan, because he showed how he came into Southampton. They were number one in the distance cover table when he came in. Tottenham were at the bottom. And then all of a sudden, after he managed Tottenham, they were top of the table that matters, that exact table, for 2 seasons in a row. And that is not too unlinked with the very thing that Roy Keane was talking about on Sunday. You know, where's the fight? Where's the work? Where's the doggedness in this team? Mauricio Pochettino teams have always been dogged. It is something that grinds the team down after a period of seasons. But if you want to fix, and if you want to start next season with an actual hope of winning the Premier League, I think Pochettino is very much candidate number one.
Daniel Hart, who's going to join us in a little while, has put a poll up on his own Twitter. If or when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gets the flick, who should be next? It's Hasenhüttl, Nagelsmann, Pochettino and the Gladbach manager. And 72% of his followers, which are Manchester United fans, largely want Pochettino, and then it's Nagelsmann, then Hasenhüttl. I think that, you know, sometimes Manchester United need to shop where other people haven't shopped and try and find one of these young managers who will come in and dictate the shape and the transfer policy and all that stuff without it being a reference point to something else that has happened in the past. Like, you can see how everything since Ferguson has been a reaction to the thing that just happened before. What if somebody just comes in and goes, why are you doing something that is connected somehow to Ferguson or as a reaction to Ferguson, or that's different from Mourinho, or that's different from any of the other two managers? Like, why don't we just come up with our own plan for a change? And it'll be my plan, and my plan is as I've shown you in this team in Germany or France or England. Like, is Hasenhüttl ridiculous?
No, like I think that if you had if you could combine Roman Abramovich and the Glazers together, like who are the people who make the decisions at Chelsea and Manchester United, and meld them together into one superhuman, you might actually have a decent footballing executive. Because if Abramovich had a little bit more patience with some of the managers he decided to bring to the Premier League, Chelsea could possibly be in a much better situation and could have had more sustained success. Like, you think about Conte, you think about Sarri, for example. They're the sorts of managers that might have done something with Manchester United. But the key thing is that they would have needed to have been given the patience that Solskjaer has been afforded. The problem is United have been brilliant with their patience, and I think that's a great thing to show to any manager. They've just been patient with the wrong manager, and that has been such a shame from a United perspective, that there has been a couple of wasted years because money has been spent and it's been misspent. And like you're 100 games into Solskjaer now, and there's been a really good piece on Football 365 done comparing the first 100 games of Solskjaer with the first 100 games of Klopp, and it's not too dissimilar in terms of how they've won and the games they've won, but it's just the spending and the first 11, the average first 11, which just looks like chalk and cheese. Okay,
OTBAM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up on the show for you this morning. We've got Daniel Harris coming in 5 minutes' time. We'll run you through the sports pages at 8:05. Joseph O'Brien celebrating another outsider victory in the Melbourne Cup. The power rankings are coming your way at 8:25. After that, we've got an interview with Conor Murray. We'll talk a bit more Irish rugby, an interview with Kavitha Davidson and our competition winner at 9:30. And then after that, we've got some rugby for you too. If you want to get in touch this morning, 0879 180 180 is the number. Every morning this week, we're giving you the chance to win the brand new Irish football jersey. It looks great. For the first time since around 1990, you can actually buy it without a sponsor on the front for a short period of time, I would suggest. To be with the chance of winning this morning on OTB AM, all you have to do is identify our mystery voice. Who's this?
Every manager around the world gets that. Take a bit of pinch of salt. They should leave the experts to do their job and do their own jobs.
Do their own jobs. It's all thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor of the FAI. Shop the new sponsorless Irish football jersey right now at thefaishop.com. We'll give you another chance to enter a little later on in the show, but you've got to enter during the live show every morning this week. We're giving this away, so make sure you tune in between 7:30 and 10 o'clock for your opportunities to win. Phil Egan, good morning to you. How are you?
Well, how are you doing, Ger?
It's a busy enough morning.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to start with the news overnight that Irish trainer Joseph O'Brien has won the Melbourne Cup for a second time. And just like in 2017, he finished first ahead of his father, Aidan O'Brien. The race that stops the nation would usually attract a crowd of around 100,000, but it was held behind closed doors in Melbourne because of the pandemic. And it was 25-1 shot twilight payment that held off a late charge from Tiger Moth, trained by Aidan O'Brien. Prince of Arran came home in third place. The race was overshadowed, though, by the death of Epsom Derby winner Anthony Van Dyke, obviously trained by Aidan O'Brien. The 4-year-old sustained a fractured fetlock on the final bend, but that is now 2 Melbourne Cups for Joseph O'Brien at the age of 27. Sligo GAA will make a statement this morning after they reported a number of COVID-19 cases in their panel. It's believed there's more than one confirmed case among the group, with several other players deemed to be close contacts, and this comes ahead of Saturday's Connacht football semi-final between Sligo and Galway at Pearse Stadium. Leicester City up to second place in the Premier League. They beat Leeds 4-1 at Ellen Road last night. It means Brendan Rodgers' side have won all 4 away games in the league this season, which includes wins away to Arsenal and Manchester City as well. Yuri Tielemans scored twice. Harvey Barnes and Jamie Vardy were also on target. So Leicester just a point behind leaders Liverpool. Leicester's next away game is actually against Liverpool. That game at Anfield is after the next international break. Fulham got their first league win of the season. They're out of the bottom 3. They beat West Brom 2-0 at Craven Cottage. Liverpool and Manchester City both in Champions League action tonight. Both have won their opening 2 group games. Liverpool's toughest test of the group so far. They're in Italy to face Atalanta in Group D. City host Olympiacos at the Etihad Stadium in Group C. Both games kick off at 8 o'clock. The Football Association of Wales says it's aware of an alleged incident involving manager Ryan Giggs. It's been reported this morning that Giggs was arrested on suspicion of assaulting his girlfriend. Wales were due to hold a press conference today to announce their latest squad. Obviously, they're due to play Ireland in the Nations League later this month. It's one of 3 games for them, but that press conference has been cancelled. And finally, Leinster and Ulster both continue their perfect starts in the Guinness Pro 14 last night. Jimmy O'Brien, Luke McGrath, Scott Penny and Michael Bent all scored tries for Leinster as they got the bonus point in a 32-19 win away to Glasgow. Michael Lowry got Ulster's only try. They beat Cardiff 11-7 in Wales last night. All
right, good stuff, Phil. Thanks very much for that. Now, let's move to, before you go, last night's football. Leicester pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw this last season. This is... you know, when things are going well for Brendan Rodgers, Brendan Rodgers will tell you that. And
but they are going well. You're
are.
a Liverpool fan, so look, everything you have to say has to be taken with a pinch of salt. They're going really well. They're second. They're playing good football. They've been brilliant in the transfer window.
Yeah, 7 games, Ger. Everyone needs to just relax a bit. Remember, the wheels came off firmly for Brendan Rodgers last season. They won 2 of their last 10 games. And if they continue that form into this season, I was pretty sure Brendan Rodgers would be shown the door. Now, they've started well, but the key is obviously Vardy. He was brilliant last night, and if he stays fit, and how do they juggle the Europa League as well with this as well? Because they ended up in the Europa League. They should be playing Champions League football this season. I know at the start of last season, you would have thought if Leicester can finish in the top 6, great, but they made a balls of it last season, not finishing in the Champions League. They went down to the final day. Even on the final day against Manchester United, Rodgers, I think, got his tactics wrong on that game, but the damage had been done. So everyone just needs to relax. But they are very tough to play away when they play away from home. And as I said, that game against Liverpool are on that great run at home, and Leicester will have their eye on that to be that first team to win at Anfield in 63 games.
Plenty to look forward to. Phil, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. It is 7:45 this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the number. John O'Leary on YouTube says, I love the show and baby-faced Owen's power rankings. I'm listening in Sydney. The power rankings from the baby-faced assassin are coming up in about 20 minutes' time, so stay tuned for that. Daniel Harris, good morning to you.
Hiya.
A brilliant audition on Monday Night Football last night from a young foreign manager who's Champions League experience, knows what it's like to work with a restrictive board, and great transfer record. Brendan Rodgers, come on down.
Yes, I mean, Rodgers is really good, and it was one of those games where basically everything went as he said it would. And he gave his team gave a really good performance, and they're really starting to play well. And they look, I mean, around about this time last season, probably for a little bit longer, there were people talking about whether Leicester could challenge for the title, and never seemed quite that realistic. But this season, maybe it isn't realistic this season either, but it's certainly a lot more realistic this season than last season, because Man City and Liverpool have both dropped a bit, and Leicester have bought really well again, so they've got loads of options. I mean, they're still without four or five first-team players, so yeah, they look really good. The question, I think, is also whether when teams don't come onto them, whether they've got enough, and they do have the kind of players that can unpick tight defences, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting ride to see exactly where he ends up in his career. Surely he's not really in the running for the Manchester United gig, is he?
Well, I guess the Manchester United gig isn't quite available yet, so there is that. I don't think he would be someone that you would never consider, but he might be someone that you would not consider at the beginning. Partly, I mean, he used to be the manager of Liverpool, which is a good place not to start if you want to be United manager. But I'm sure, on the other hand, he'd probably do quite a good job with these players.
That stuff matters, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't matter in every country necessarily. I mean, if you look in Italy, for example, the best Italian players, all of them, the best players who've played in Italy seem to have played for almost everyone. But yeah, it does matter in England. We don't see it very often. I know people remember the aggravation when George Graham went to Tottenham, when Steve Bruce went from Sunderland to Newcastle, and well, first of all, when he went to Sunderland as a Geordie. And I don't think people were particularly keen when he then turned up at Newcastle. And then he gave some people other reasons not to be keen on him with the kind of football that they had to watch. But then at the same time, there were other people probably that were quite pleased with the points he was getting. So, I think what you find is people don't like it when a manager who's linked to a rival joins them. And then in the first instance, and then as soon as things go wrong, it then becomes quite a significant issue.
Yeah. Okay, let's consummate this conversation then, because the reason we want to talk about last night's football is really because Mauricio Pochettino, with his Sylvan locks, appeared. There was a bit of godlight around him. Maybe that was just on my TV, I don't know. But it looked like this was how you would arrive if you were the Messiah, particularly in 2020 in football terms. You appear on Monday Night Football and you get a few softballs thrown at you, and life is great. He's obviously the greatest manager of all time. Certainly that's my takeaway from last night.
He didn't present himself like a man who turned up for a job interview. That is for sure. He looked extremely scruffy. But I think Pochettino is, he was as you think he is, I think. Like, he's someone who it's very easy to see why the players would run through walls for him. He just seems like a really nice bloke. He loves football. And I think that really came through when he was talking about supporters, and how one of the reasons he's not minding being out of football so much is that it basically is a different sport without the fans. And it also reminds you that his teams always play with intensity, and thinking about jobs that he might get, the kind of jobs that he might get are where that intensity is not always there under the current managers. And I guess it was kind of quite nice to see Pochettino. I thought it was really interesting also what he said when I think Jamie Carragher said to him, when did you feel that the Spurs players were your players? And he said, right from the beginning. And I think that tells you, first of all, that about the atmosphere that he wants to create. It's in some ways the opposite of the atmosphere that you sometimes see Mourinho creating, where he feels a closeness to his players, and also the fact that he's taking responsibility from the off, that the results are up to him and they're on him, and they're not on the people that preceded him.
Is intensity quite high up in the list of priorities for Manchester United at this point, especially in the context of what happened on Sunday?
I would say that when the thing with United at the moment is that their top level is really a pretty good level. If United play really well, then you would back them to beat or give a good game to any team in the world. And we've seen that against PSG. We've seen it against Manchester City. We've seen it against Leipzig. That if they play well, then they're solid at the back, and they have the midfield to run other teams off the pitch and to stifle them, and they have attackers that can give any defence a difficult night. But the problem, as you say, against Arsenal at the weekend was Arsenal pressed them, sure, and Arteta got his tactics right. But the biggest difference between the teams was intensity. Arsenal had it and United didn't. And then you see Harry Maguire after the game talking about maybe we were complacent. And it was, you won one game in a row. How could you possibly be complacent? And that isn't necessarily, a problem with Solskjaer. Obviously it is, because as we just said, they're his players. But some of these players have been like that for 2 and 3 managers. So there's a lot of blame to go around, so there's no need to be sparing. So you can allocate it in all the various directions. But Luke Shaw's been like that for 3 managers at United now, and also managers at Southampton. So to say, well, that's Ole's fault is harsh in some ways. Paul Pogba is like that. That is the kind of player that he can be sometimes. So he's conceded 3 penalties in 6 starts in the league. You can blame Solskjaer for picking him. I'm not sure you can blame Solskjaer for the actual thing that we saw happening.
Do you then also apportion some blame to how Solskjaer approached the game tactically on Sunday? Because obviously it is the intensity and the way the players applied themselves, which is definitely the main contributing factor. But it does seem strange to me that there was such a good plan for Paris Saint-Germain, such a good plan for RB Leipzig, and maybe an absence of a good plan for a game against Arsenal, arguably the lesser of those 3 opposition.
I think when you're not the best team or not a perfect team, it means that when you play matches, particularly against other ones of the better teams, you can't just go and play. So if you watch Liverpool, more or less, they play the same way every time, because they know that if they play well, and even if they don't play well, they're probably going to win. When you're not that good, you have to mess things around. You have to try and find different systems and different personnel for each game. And it seemed reasonable that United, it looked against Leipzig that maybe this diamond actually is the best way of hiding faults and elevating strengths, because United don't have any wide players. Well, a diamond doesn't require wingers. United have good strikers. Okay, well, pick 2 of them then. And teams don't like to mark. Defenders aren't used to marking 2 strikers. And it means also with a diamond, you don't lose a numbers game in midfield. So playing that formation made some sort of sense. There still is a weakness out wide, because with a diamond, you're relying on your fullbacks to provide your width. And without Alex Telles, United don't really have fullbacks who are able to do that. But I think that one of the mistakes that Solskjaer made was that he switched Fred and Scott McTominay. So Scott McTominay, against Leipzig, he played at the base of the diamond. Against Arsenal, he played on the right-hand side. In theory, that should make sense, because the players that play on the sides of the diamonds have to do a lot of running. And McTominay has great physicality, great strength, great running power. But the way he played, it looked like he hadn't really been coached how to play that position. And that United were definitely too slow to tell him to stay out wide or to swap him with Fred or whatever it was. But I think the main problem with the way the system worked, and this isn't even necessarily a problem with the system, because this would have been the case whatever way United played, was that Arsenal pressed them in possession high up the pitch. And United don't really have a midfield specialist, someone who plays in front of the back 4, whose passing and whose touch and whose vision and whose awareness are good enough to pass out from the back 4. They have 2 players in the team who might be able to do that, who don't play that position, really, Axel Tuanzebe and Donny van der Beek. And it's easy for me to sit here and be wise after the event. I wrote on Friday morning that United should carry on with the diamond, but it's not my job to see this stuff coming. It is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's stuff to see this coming. Arsenal were always likely to press because they often play that way. And we saw when United played Southampton, when United played Villa, when United played West Ham at the end of last season, that those teams did that to United, and United really struggled with it. And United either didn't seem to have thought that might happen, or the solution they tried to find was not the right solution, and they didn't do anything to change it in terms of personnel. They tried a different formation in the second half, worked a little bit better. But one of the things that was problematic in the game was that the changes didn't work, so that in the end, players who should have stayed on went off, and players who probably shouldn't have come on came on, and the whole thing looked an absolute mess.
Just one more on Pochettino, Daniel. You say that Luke Shaw and Paul Pogba take a fair deal of the blame because of their inability to work overly hard or exert themselves in that sort of system. Do you then think that Pochettino will need a transfer window or two to replace those sort of players, and that it isn't going to be a plug-and-play sort of system like we saw previously with Southampton and Tottenham under Pochettino?
Not necessarily. With those two players, I wouldn't say that they're not willing to work hard. It isn't that. There's sometimes a lack of intensity in the way that they play. And like Luke Shaw's been really good recently, but yeah, this was not a good day. So I mean, I think that Pochettino already has an alternative to Luke Shaw. He has Alex Telles, and I don't think it will be long before Alex Telles takes Luke Shaw's place.
Daniel, you accidentally said Pochettino already has an alternative to Luke Shaw at left back.
No, I didn't say accidentally.
Okay, so you've already appointed him in your head. It sounds like you've already appointed him. This is what you want. This is Freudian. I thought that was Freudian. My bad. Sorry.
No. When you said Daniel, you accidentally. I'm thinking. I don't think I said anything that began with F or C. But no. The question was about. Do I think that Pochettino would be able to impose his style, and with Luke Shaw and Pogba? And I think he already, or anyone, has those options already. United have Donny van de Beek. And they also have other different kinds of midfield players. They don't have to pick Paul Pogba in terms of they could easily construct a midfield with the things, not with Paul Pogba's unique attributes. And Paul Pogba playing really well is a really good player, obviously. But they have Donny van de Beek, who is another attacking midfield player. And so they don't actually need Paul Pogba in that aspect. And they already have Alex Telles, so they don't need to have Luke Shaw. But Luke Shaw, as I said, he played really well against Leipzig. He played really well on the left of a back three against PSG. He didn't play well against Arsenal. If you're playing a diamond, Alex Telles, and if you're playing 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, on the left of that midfield, Alex Telles is a much better option because he can attack. And I also think he probably has a different mentality to Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw, you watch Luke Shaw play, and it looks like he's got to where he's got on talent mainly. Whereas Alex Telles, if you read about him and you hear people talking about Alex Telles has had to work a lot harder, I would say, to get to where he's got to than Luke Shaw. And he got to Porto quite late in his career. He's got to United quite late in his career. That might sound alarm bells ringing because it makes you wonder, are you actually any good? But people that know Alex Telles a lot better than me think that Alex Telles most definitely is good and absolutely is better than Luke Shaw. So I think every time United have one of these disasters, I still find myself thinking, there's a good team in there. There's not a league champion team in there probably, but there is a good team in there. And it doesn't need that many signings to be a team that you think might be able to challenge for the league. And we see, again, that their best level, I keep saying this, their best level is a really good level. The problem is that they don't hit their best level often enough, and that their lowest level is an absolutely disgusting level. Well, and that was the level we saw against Arsenal.
Let me ask you this. If you're in Solskjaer's kitchen cabinet or war room cabinet, and it seemed like Gary Neville after the match last night was perhaps volunteering some help with that, it was like time to make some very tough decisions for him. What can you do to save your job? Because 2 weeks ago, I would have said that essentially Solskjaer felt like he was safe for the rest of the season because the team was performing so well in Europe that it would be crazy to sack a manager who's top of his Champions League group, and who knows what might happen in that competition. It seems like he will get stuff right over a period of time. The team are getting fitter. All the things that he said was wrong with them, you could point to evidence to back up that he was correct. And yet, here we are again, where Pochettino appears on TV, the clamour for the debate around the next manager, all that kind of stuff, it crescendos again. If you are advising him, or if you are Solskjaer talking to himself, what are you saying that you need to change immediately to wrestle the narrative back?
I think the problem is that what it's starting to look like a cycle, isn't it? Where you have some really good performances, then you have some that are so unspeakably bad, and then you get to a point where it looks like one or two more defeats and you're going to be in trouble. Then they produce a couple more good performances and you think they've got it, and then they produce some more disgraceful performances and you think, . So I've been saying this for a long time, that Pogba and Matic are going to get him sacked. And when I say that, I don't mean that Pogba and Matic aren't good players who can't offer anything to the team, who aren't useful in the right circumstances, but they are common factors in some of United's worst performances, also in some of United's best performances. But again, it's not really about the best performances, it's about the worst performances. And they are common factors in some of those. And some of the worst things that you see consistently in the team. When I think about what are the worst things about the worst performances, it's a lack of speed to the ball, it's a lack of speed on the ball, it's a lack of clever forward passing, and that is Matic and some of Pogba. And I think that when I look at Solskjaer's teams, and I think, well, if I were him, I'd be thinking, well, I've got some of these players who are not the future. United are not going to win or challenge for league titles with Nemanja Matic. He's old, he's miles past his best, so I would be trying to not include him wherever possible, because I'd be trying to build the team that might be able to do that. Pogba has let United down so often, and there'll always be circumstances. It's not like Pogba needs good players to play with and all of this, and what position does he play, and perhaps he needs to play here, and perhaps he needs to play there. Ultimately, over the last 4 years, Paul Pogba hasn't been good enough. It's that simple. He's had a lot of opportunities, a lot of different systems, a lot of different positions, 2 different managers, and it hasn't worked. And when Paul Pogba plays really badly, it looks really bad. And so I would be trying to pick Donny van de Beek ahead of him wherever I could, and trying to use Pogba as some kind of impact sub, or maybe further forward when United play teams who are likely to sit back. But in teams who are likely to get stuck into United, that is not where Pogba flourishes. And so I guess those are the kind of changes. I'd be trying to get Alex Telles in as soon as possible. I think the other thing that has to be said, and I thought really looked the case at the weekend, was that Anthony Martial getting himself suspended for 3 games was extremely unhelpful. And when you play against the press, one way around the press is getting the ball forward as quickly as possible, getting the ball over the press or through the press. And he holds the ball up much better than Mason Greenwood and Marcus Rashford do. And United really missed him at the weekend, because every time they got the ball forward, they would either be fouled or tackled. And Martial is a bit more robust than Greenwood, and a bit more robust than Rashford, so would either have been able to stand up to the fouls, and there were quite a few of them, and I felt like Gabriel and Holding got away with quite a few potential cards in that game. But obviously, that's not why United lost, just an observation.
Yeah.
I feel like Anthony Martial has the physical presence to perhaps have been able to have ridden those better than Rashford and Greenwood did. But Solskjaer should know by now which players he can rely on to put in a shift, and which players are likely to put him under pressure by not turning up. And he needs to stop including them, and try and include his better players. Really.
Fair enough. Give me a number of months that you think before we end up having these conversations about who will replace Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Are we at a 3 month? Are we at a 1 month? Is it that short?
It depends. Are you asking me when I think he's going to get fired, or if I think he's going to get fired, or when I think United will have their next awful run?
I guess the awful run will presage the sacking. So.
I don't think he's that far from getting fired. But again, I don't think he's that far from having a team that is pretty good. So it's really hard to see. I mean, if they don't beat Istanbul and they lose to Everton at the weekend, then he's in big trouble. I think they probably will beat Istanbul, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a good performance against Everton at the weekend either. So. I imagine I'm not expecting him to get sacked in the next few weeks. I think that he'll be all right this week, and then they're in a position where the games start to get a bit easier, and Martial comes back, and Van de Beek will be and Telles will be a bit more used to the league. So I don't think he'll get fired in the next month or so. So I don't think we'll be having a serious conversation about this in the next month or so, but it could easily happen.
Who knows? Daniel, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million.
See you again, lads. Bye, have a good day.
Dennis on YouTube says, Daniel Harris, great insight as usual, up there with your best contributors. Great show, something to look forward to in these miserable times. Thanks for that, Dennis. And thanks for the comments as well. We really appreciate it. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. On YouTube, Ger Eoin says, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has bought really well, in my opinion. He needs a few more transfer windows to get the squad that he wants, and to get rid of the deadwood he inherited from the 3 previous managers in 6 years. Changing the manager again at this point seems ridiculous and clearly indicative of the people really responsible for United's problems deflecting the attention from themselves. I mean, I think that is 100% correct. We're going to take a quick break. We're back with the newspapers and your top stories, where we'll be talking a bit more about the possibility of Galway going straight through to the Connacht football final. Stay tuned.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Friend of the pod?
On a positive note, golf courses are open in Northern Ireland.
And here in the UK, they're open.
Well, we can't leave our county, Peter, so...
Oh, no, well, we're essential worker. Have you got your letter, Joe? So, there's obviously, I'd say, pretty sparse.
So a lot of outside broadcasts happening over the next while, I imagine.
Royal County Down, we're coming your way. Live. We could do next week's show from Royal County Down.
Yeah, sure.
It's genius.
Imagine the bits we all coming our way.
OTB Sports Golf Weekly with Now TV, live every Thursday afternoon on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM
with Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow.
Every manager around the world gets that. Take a bit of pinch of salt. They should leave the experts to do their job and do their own jobs.
Who's that? Just tell us who our mystery voice is this morning. Tell us who you are, and you could be in with a chance to win the brand new Irish football jersey. WhatsApp your answer to 0879 180 180. It's all thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor of the FAI. Shop the new sponsorless Irish football jersey right now over at faishop.com. We'll give you another chance to enter in a little while on the show, but you've got to be watching live every morning or listening live every morning, and WhatsApp us 0879 180 180. His name, your name, and you'll be in the draw to win the shirts today. Time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
So most of the sports pages are reflecting on last night's game. So I would have taken Sexton off. That's Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll talking about Ireland's fly half issues. I think there was a consensus that they wouldn't have taken him off, but also he shouldn't have stropped his way off the pitch. If Pogba was anyone else, he wouldn't get a sniff of a game, says Pat Nevin. Bodden Wood on Sexton's decisions. I was shouting, kick the points. And Tyrone need to avoid an Alex Ferguson situation with Mickey Hart, says Enda McGinley. I think was rowing in behind the consensus that there needs to be a change there. And then Fulham obviously won last night in the early kick-off. Leicester won late. Leeds are given some hard labour. Vardy played well last night. Mo no cheat. This is ahead of tonight's game against Atalanta. Jurgen Klopp a little bit peeved by the fact that Mo Salah is being accused of cheating. And Virus put Sligo doubt in semi. Talk about that in a moment. From his piece last night on Off the Ball, that's the lead story. In the Indo this morning, O'Driscoll believes Sexton should apologise. Alexander Arnold targets Red's leadership role, and clubs to get 5 million boost from Sport Ireland aid. That's GAA story. So the 30 million odd has been given to the GAA, 18 million to the IRFU, and 13 million to the FAI. The Guardian, their back page, Liverpool sees red. Salah has the marks to prove he's no diver. Tony Cascarino setting the agenda in English football at the moment. We won't let any clubs go to the wall. Premier League's COVID pledge to the Championship. Dementia fear for today's stars. This is following the awful news about Bobby Charlton. Dr. Willie Stewart of the University of Glasgow says the dementia diagnosis and Nobby Styles' death should focus attention on the need for further research. He obviously is one of the doctors who has led the charge against concussion in rugby. Euros rethink. Dublin doubts as pan-Euro finals bin. That's the headline on the Mail. I think Dublin could host extra games is the other side of that story from Paul Lennon. So I think there was a story yesterday that Russia are being considered as the host for the entire tournament, but that there is also a possibility that they'll divide it up. So they're scenario planning at UEFA, it's fair to say. Mo's no cheat, and he has the bruises to prove it. And then Elevenite for the Foxes at Elland Road last night. Trent, I'll step up is the headline on the back of this. So they're the pre-match press conferences. Legend Ox bows out at the Curragh. This is John Ox, who we had on Friday Night Racing a couple of weeks back. Brilliant interview. Just somebody who has accumulated a lot of wisdom in his time as a trainer and had an absolutely stunning career. Famous as well for going around the world. And we're going to talk with a successful Irish trainer who's had success around the world in a couple of minutes' time as well. Understrength Reds can nick a draw on tricky trip to Italy. So the Racing Post predicts a draw for that. John Treacy is defending the GAA's allocation of 31 million, which is obviously 13 million more than the IRFU got and 18 million more than the FAI got. Golf got 2.7 million, Cricket Ireland 1.5, Gymnastics 1.3. And then Mark Landers has been talking, saying that the Cork players need to earn the jersey. The Times for you very quickly. Donegal are now serious All-Ireland contenders. Listen to this on. And now Donegal have been road tested by Tyrone. I put them at third favourites for the All-Ireland. But that is a modest placing. I can make a strong argument for them going the whole way. It sounds like... Is Kevin McStay... Is he power ranking? Is he power ranking teams in his column? Is that what he's doing?
Must be. It's the exact same ranking that they are in the most correct and most decent power rankings.
You should get your solicitors on there, Owen. Golfing class between England and Ireland and the rest... Sorry, better read that headline properly. I wish. Golfing class between England and France and the rest may be widening is Jerry Thorney's piece today. And then 2 quick more. The Sun. Arrested Giggs clings to job. Quizzed after ABH, that's actual bodily harm claim. Squad naming cancelled. Ryan Giggs Futures Wales boss was thrown into doubt after his arrest. That's the story that the Sun have. They have a Greater Manchester Police spokesman saying police were called at 10:05 p.m. on Sunday to reports of a disturbance. A woman in her 30s sustained injuries but did not require treatment. A 46-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of Section 47 assault and Section 39 common assault. So that's a story that you're going to hear more of from today. And halt kids ban or risk couch potato crisis is the Telegraph's headline there. Where do you want to go? Sligo Galway's in trouble on.
Yeah, exactly. Several positive COVID cases. It's left Sligo Galway, as you say, under severe threat this weekend. There has been a statement issued and I guess there's been confirmation from Sligo that they have had a number of COVID cases and they're now following HSE guidelines. They're trying to establish close contacts with the positive cases and they're all obviously now self-isolating. I should say actually a statement was due this morning. That is just a source from within Sligo who said that. So it'll be interesting to see how this morning develops because we had a situation with a couple of other counties over the last few weeks, but this is the first time that a championship game is going to be under serious threat. It could be a situation where Galway get a free pass through to the Connacht final, which takes place on November 15th, or Sligo end up playing a shoestring team. Or I'm not sure what exactly the rules are, but if a lot of more people than they expect return negative tests, could they be allowed to play as well? I think there is an element of confusion about what exactly happens in those situations because of what happened with Offaly and their hurling team a couple of weeks ago as well, having essentially to forfeit their first championship game in the Christie Ring. So it's not a good time for Sligo. You'll have to say that the fixture is under huge threat because as well as last weekend went from a GAA perspective, there is always this looming threat and they still need to be able to toe the line and be perfect with everything they're doing in relation to COVID-19.
It was interesting as well that earlier on in the week, John Horan was very specific. Once we get to the semi-final stage, we won't have any problems really about having postponements. That's fine. And, you know, contiguous with that, there are no games scheduled for January for next year as it stands at the moment from an Inter-County perspective. I don't know what the plans were for the Sigerson and Fitzgibbon Cups. Maybe they were due to go ahead as scheduled. But for semi-finals and finals of the All-Ireland, if a team has an outbreak of COVID, they said they would be happy to have postponements. But up until that point, no postponements. So if this game can't go ahead this weekend, then the show must go on. Galway go straight through. That would have been the language that's been used up to this point. Yeah,
like if they feel that there's going to be like the Offaly case here where the player was at training and that those players are deemed to be close contacts as a result of just being at a training session with that person, then the game can't go ahead. Sligo are going to unfortunately have to pull out and it's a real nightmare for them at this point. It's one of these things where they will feel so beat up about it, but there is, you'd assume, nothing more they could have done. I think most counties are really on edge about this thing and are going above and beyond the line of duty to actually ensure that everything is safe. And you can kind of even see it with some of the games that you're watching on TV, even like a few of the managers that are interviewed on television are actually kind of afraid to pull down their mask and actually do interviews and stuff like that. Everybody is just so conscious of every little bit that could lead to their team being affected by coronavirus, and you do have to feel for Sligo that they're the latest county to have to go through this, but maybe it won't be as bad as it looks this morning, and maybe the positive COVID cases number will actually be a lot lower than we might suspect. Let's just the two scenarios: one that is the case, and enough players are able to provide clean samples or negative tests, and everybody's happy for the game to go ahead. That's one scenario. The other is that the game
doesn't go ahead, Sligo forfeit, and Galway go through, Galway, you would reckon, would have much preferred to have a championship match to blow whatever cobwebs are left from the end of their stuttering league campaign away.
Definitely, yeah. They'll have wanted this game this weekend, no question. And it kind of comes back to this idea about, like, is it better to be playing games at the moment or not? I think in Galway's case, it's definitely a situation where they want to play a game this weekend because, as you say, didn't finish the league in scintillating form, to say the least. And they looked at Mayo last week, and you look at that Mayo performance, imperfect as it was at times in the first quarter of that game, something that'll bring them on another bit for their meeting with Roscommon this weekend. And if Galway don't get to play this game, they go into a game against Roscommon or against Mayo, having had a bad league campaign and 2 weeks off. Undercooked might be one way of putting it, but they will at best just be unsure of where they really are. So it's not good news for either county this weekend. This game gets pulled, no question about that, and it's not great for Galway's prospects. And I think they've been a little bit written off actually over the last few weeks. Certainly when you think about the All-Ireland contenders, like I know Kevin McStay is mentioning Donegal there as his number 3 team. Tyrone might have been his number 3 team. Between Kerry, Dublin and Mayo, it felt like a bit of a 5-team conversation. I think the general logic is that this is very much a 4-horse race, and Galway people will love the sound of that. They will love the idea that they can beat Sligo, potentially get a walkover, and then beat Roscommon or Mayo to win a Connacht title and knock potentially one of those 4 horses out of the race. And if there's one county to use that as a bit of siege mentality, you reckon Galway might be able to use it to their benefit. Yeah, they just need to be able to turn it on really quickly. There's no time to build up a head of steam. There's not much time for experimentation. Every single training session, every A versus B game, every one of those drills that we saw Jim McGuinness doing, they all of a sudden are invested with a lot more importance because of the telescope time that the season's going to last. Yeah, there's also the real incentive of what happens down the line. Just to go back to Donegal being mentioned as All-Ireland contenders is definitely correct. They definitely are All-Ireland contenders, but they're going to have to do this in a much more difficult way than a Galway, Mayo, or say Kerry would have to do it. But there is no question about that. It helps that Cavan beat Monaghan. No disrespect to Cavan, but I reckon Donegal would prefer to play them than play Monaghan. I mean, we saw what they did to Cavan last year in the Ulster final. They're a good bit better than them, whereas Monaghan can sometimes come up with a big performance more randomly, and we saw that this weekend. Because that randomness can also lead to them underperforming. But Donegal, they still have to navigate a pretty tough Ulster Championship. If they win the Ulster Championship, they then have to play Dublin in a semi-final. We all know what happened last time they beat Dublin in a semi-final. It can just bring you to a place where you can't get to that level again in an All-Ireland final, and it'll be against whatever, a Mayo, Galway, Kerry or Cork or whatever it may be in that situation. So it's a very tough path for them to travel. But conversely, as you say, then Galway will be licking their chops at the side of the draw they're in, because I think anybody coming from Connacht, they would much prefer to be playing a Kerry or Cork than they would be to play a Dublin in an All-Ireland semi-final, because they might also be on the path towards a backlash after not being amazing in their 2 league games. One last question about this, and we'll talk again about this in the power rankings, which are coming fairly soon. When I asked Kieran Donaghy yesterday about the level of worry or fear or whatever there might be in Kerry about Cork, he literally said Ara at the start of it. I was like, come on. It was I've always been a glass half empty man, he was essentially saying. And I can understand why, if you're a player, you can't allow yourself to get the disease that Manchester United apparently had with their 1-in-a-row win and be complacent. But Cork having a chance against Kerry this weekend, surely. Well, we can get into this now, or we can get into this at another point. But my theory on what your perceived Yeraism is actually a sense of expectation that people from Kerry have in winning every single game. And when you expect to win every single game, if there is a possibility that you will not win a game, what is your emotion going to be? A little bit of nervousness. That's what it is. There is a randomised nature that we have seen in this fixture, and it has worked both ways. You take 2014, for example. Nobody expected Kerry to win that game, and they hammered Cork. Take 2 years ago, for example. People expected Cork to put in a pretty good performance. They were terrible. So it works both ways. The randomised nature of it, you just don't know what is going to happen. Last year was crazy. Last year was a crazy, crazy game between these two counties. You can't look at that as a Kerry supporter or as a Cork supporter and say confidently, yep, I know exactly what is going to happen this weekend. So it comes from that place of expecting to win every game, but also having empirical evidence to show you that quite often you haven't a clue what is going to happen. No back door. Give people a break if they're going to say Ara at the start of their answer about this game on Sunday.
Well, I just think that you guys are like so. When you talk about the craziness, Cork put in this amazing performance and got hammered out the gate. Like, that's not that unusual.
No, they didn't. They lost by 3 points. They almost beat Kerry last year. You're getting confused with the Dublin game when they put in this amazing perforence and got hammered.
No, did they not score 3 early goals or 2 early goals and then still get hammered? Essentially.
That was 2 years ago. That was when they scored. I think they went, two early goals. I think it was. I think they scored 3 goals in that game as well. But definitely for the first 10 minutes, you were like, oh God, this is going to happen, and it didn't happen. And then last year, when the comeback began to happen, you were like, well, this is the same as last year, except it wasn't, because they came extremely close to Kerry, and there was like the Red Sea parting. And I don't know what kind of precipitated that, because it wasn't a hugely different Cork setup, or so it seemed at the time, to the previous year, and they just got relegated to Division 3. So this is what I'm talking about. They're I hate to use the phrase form goes out the window, but all these pieces of information that you throw into the machine sometimes pop up with a crazy thing. And I mentioned that 2014 game where Kerry hammered Cork. The responding fixture to then the following year was Cork coming to Kerry, and the expectancy was that Kerry would hammer them, and they needed that Dion Fitzgerald point in the last second of the game to just save their bacon. So this is why there's a little bit of nervousness.
Okay, fair enough. We'll talk about that a bit more in a few minutes' time when Owen's patented power rankings are upon us. But at 22 minutes past 8, I'm delighted to say we have a very happy, I guess, this morning, Joseph O'Brien with us after victory in the Melbourne Cup this morning. Joseph, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. Very good, thank you.
So how do you celebrate victory 8,000 miles away?
Well, I suppose we came straight into work here this morning with on the first lot. So we're just finished first lot, and obviously there's a great buzz around the yard this morning.
Where did you watch the race? Just at home?
Just at home, yeah, just at home. Obviously it was at 4 a.m. So we're up at 3:30 and touched base with the guys on the track, and everything was good, and watched the race at home then, yeah.
A lot of people, again, just waking up this morning won't actually have seen the race. Your horse was an outsider, 25-1 shot.
Yeah, he was a big enough price, but he had very good form really all season here in Ireland. He had a couple of big wins at the Curragh. He was a big enough price, but he was a legitimate contender all the same. He had ran in the race last year and was a little bit disappointing, but this was our first year with a full preparation with him, and he had come off the back of some very good runs, at the Curragh through the year and in the Irish Ledger.
And so Twilight Payment is the horse we're talking about. When did you realise that this was, obviously you brought him down last year, not just for a look around and for the crack, so you must have thought this was a perfect Melbourne Cup horse the first time or very early on in getting them into the yard.
Yeah, well, Lloyd and Nick Williams bought him from Jim Bulger halfway through last season, after he actually beat a horse of mine called a Trove at the Curragh one day, and from there, he was obviously a horse that was on that trail, but he had a couple of runs for me last season, and I didn't perform up to scratch really. So he had a good long break, and he had a full preparation with us this year, and really he just went from strength to strength with each race, and obviously it culminated in the Melbourne Cup last night, which was his long-term target.
Okay, so you kind of, from last year's Melbourne Cup, you were like, look, we could actually get him back here next year and give him another go at it.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult for a horse to go from into a whole new regime halfway through a season, and you'd often see that with horses that would change stable, that it would take them a little bit of time just to get to know the new gallops and surroundings and that. So yeah, absolutely. But he's really went from strength to strength this year.
And again, a lot of people won't have actually seen the race. Was it close? Did he have the run that you wanted the whole way through? Did you kind of know from a little bit out that this is going well?
He made all the running, which is very difficult to do, but he's got a fantastic attitude and a huge will to win. And he loves to bowl along in front. And he went off in the lead. It was ridden by a chap called Jai McNeil, it was his first ride in the Cup, but he's had a fantastic couple of seasons in Melbourne, and he's one of the top riders down there, and he's renowned for being a good judge of pace. And that was a lot of the reason why Lloyd and Nick tried to book him to ride Twilight Payment, and he made all the running, and he went for home around kind of the 5 furlong marker. And Twilight has been, over the last number of seasons in Ireland, even when he was with Jim before he came to us, he was renowned for being very hard horse to pass. And they came at him in the straight, but he fought them off, and they were finishing strong. But his will to win, I got him over the line. And
you touched off one of your dad's horses again for the second time to win a Melbourne Cup.
Yeah, Tiger Mott was second. A huge run from him. A 3-year-old coming from one of the widest draws in the race, and only his 5th lifetime start. So that was an incredible effort for him. Our Twilight Payment is a 7-year-old gelding. He's been to every dance, and has all the experience and the miles on the clock. Whereas Tiger Mott is a 3-year-old, and to come from the draw that he came from, and to just get nabbed or just beaten was a huge performance.
So plenty in his future as well. Go on, sorry.
Are you more nervous watching from the other side of the world on a morning like this morning, or how were the emotions this morning?
Yeah, sure. Listen, obviously, Owen, you'd be nervous a big race like that. But Mark Power, who led the team that have been in Australia for the guts of the last 6 weeks. Sean Corby looks after Twilight Payment every day. MJ, Neil and Leighton have all been there with our team of horses, and I've every faith in them. I didn't have any reservations along the way that the horse wouldn't be presented in fantastic condition. We were in touch every day, and Nick Williams had been there to watch the horse galloping most days, and we were in touch with him most of the time. So we knew that the horse had a very good preparation, and that we knew we couldn't do any more other than need a little bit of luck in the run. And so when you have your preparation done like that, you obviously still will be nervous, but it's in the lap of the gods from there.
And what's the first thing you and your dad say to each other after the finish?
Well, listen, obviously it was a fantastic race, and both horses ran immensely well, and we're very proud of their performances, and listen, he was delighted for me, and as I would have been for him, but just delighted that the horses performed well.
I'm sure it was obviously mixed emotions for your dad, despite the fact that the horse had finished second and did really well. Anthony Van Dyke was a stable superstar and was unfortunately injured badly in the race and was euthanised just afterwards. So that definitely, I'm sure, is a pall that hangs over it.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, in elite sports, footballers and whatever, people suffer severe fractures, and unfortunately, in the case of a thoroughbred, they don't recover very well from them at all in this case, because it was quite severe. So an emotional day for everyone involved with him, and to EJ and the lads that have been looking after the horse for an extended period of time. Very, very much an emotional day for them and connections.
Yeah, I don't doubt. One last question. Obviously, we understand the world is in the lockdown scenario that it's in. Do you get as much fulfilment, or is there a little sense of you going, I really wish I could have been there for this?
Not really, Ger. Like you say, this is a very strange time. Nobody has ever seen anything like this, really. And I would love to have been there, of course, and love to have enjoyed the day and the celebrations and the racing. But we're very lucky that we were able to take part in the race at all, and there's a huge amount of work has gone on behind the scenes from our team here, by Mark Hackett in the office. There's a huge amount of work liaising with Racing Victoria and the people in Australia to get the people there and get the horses there, and the quarantines and all the different things that had to be done to make it happen. So we're just very lucky that we were able to take part in the race, special to win it.
How do you rank this amongst all of the things that you've won already at this stage of your career? Is it because it's so far away and so difficult to get everything right, and because of all the logistical issues, is it actually one of the most fulfilling things that you can win?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The Melbourne Cup is is one of the biggest races in the world, and whatever way you look at it, it's watched by so many people, and it'll be on, literally on the front page of all the papers in Australia over the last few days in the build up to the race, and not just on the racing or the sporting press. It really kind of is across the whole country. They call it the race that stops a nation, and it really does. And to take part in the race is very special, and to have won it twice is really hard to believe, to be quite honest. And just very thankful to Lloyd and Nick and the support that we have, and the team of people that we have behind the scenes.
It's a stunning achievement, Joseph. Congratulations. You should really enjoy these days, because I know it feels like they're going to come forever and ever. And so far your track record is fairly sensational in it, but definitely pinch yourself and enjoy it. Thanks a million for joining us.
Pleasure, Ger. Thanks, one.
It's Joseph O'Brien giving us his thoughts there on a stunning achievement in securing his second Melbourne Cup. The horse was Twilight Payment, and touched off one of his dad's horses to win it, having made the running the whole way through. Worth checking out on YouTube a little bit later on when you get the opportunity to. 087 9 180 180 is the number here if you want to get in touch with us. And you should get your pens sharpened or your nibs pointy, because it's time for us to get angry at the power rankings. This next slot is our power ranking slot, which has become known as Two Pricks, One List.
BOLLOCKS. Go with fancy dance. Get the simple things wrong. A nice tea. There's only one answer for that.
Where did this ferocious determination out there today come from? The media. Every one of them wrote us off.
The article was rubbish.
It's not my fault that just haven't beat Kerry in a big game in Cook Park.
I'm going to lose all my life today.
It is time for the power ranking with Owen Sheehan. Owen Sheehan's power ranking. How did that happen? You're a clown. It's very, very intemperate language to be using. Go for it, Owen. What are we doing?
We are starting at number 32 as ever in the first 8 teams you see here. Either didn't play at the weekend or got beaten at the weekend. Predicted by the power rankings, basically. At 32, we've got London. At 31, we have Waterford. At 30, we have Sligo. At number 29 is Carlow. Number 28 is Antrim. Number 27 is Louth. At number 26 is Wexford. And at number 25 is Leitrim. Will any of those teams win a championship match this year? Probably not. At number 24, we have Derry down 4 places. I expect them to be on the rise again, but I just wanted to give a couple of counties their day in the sun, namely Limerick, who are up into 23rd, Wicklow, who are up into 22nd, Offaly, who are up into 21st, and Longford, who are up into 20th. All 4 of those counties recorded wins at the weekend. At number 19, we have Fermanagh. At number 18, we have Down, who are down 1 place, and Westmeath, who are also down 1 place. We'll get to the risers in just a moment, because Clare are also down into number 16th. The big riser, though, here in the mid-teens is Tipperary, up 3 points. Didn't see this one coming, didn't predict them to beat Clare. I thought they would give them a really good game. They're a lot better than they were pre-pandemic with all the players that they've got back, and they got the job done against Clare at the weekend. A huge win for them and a huge rise for them up to 15th. At number 14, we have Kildare, who are down a place. Laois are down into 13th, and Meath are down into 12th. Monaghan also down into 11th. This is because the big risers this week are Cavan, up 5 places. I'm sorry to everybody who knows me for getting swept away by this notion that Cavan deserved to be in 15th place. People from Meath held a national day of protest because they were behind Cavan. Tommy Rooney used the stupid laugh crying emoji when Cavan were ahead of them in the power rankings 2 weeks ago. Nobody's laughing, but plenty of people from Meath are crying now because Cavan are ahead of them, and rightly so. Cork up 1 into 9th, and let's get into the top 8. Armagh still there at number 8. Almost by default, they weren't amazing at the weekend, but I don't think Cavan or Cork have put in the exceptional performance and the exceptional consistency to go ahead of them in the power rankings just yet. It could happen yet. At number 7, we've got Galway. Roscommon 6th, Tyrone are down into 5th, and Mayo leapfrogged them into 4th. And our top 3 stays the same from last week. It is Donegal in number 3, Kerry number 2, Dublin number 1.
Look, there's you're Dublin are dining out on last season and everything that we've seen from them. I've made this discussion and this argument up to this point. What have you done for me lately, Dublin? Not great form in the league. Stereotypical Dublin league form. And unfortunately, this year's championship is actually going to be played in league conditions. So,
well, hold on a minute. What is their? Tell me about their non-great league form. Explain this to me.
Meath should have beaten them. Galway should have beaten them.
and they didn't. They finished second with 10 points. Kerry topped the league with 11 points. So, like, are you saying that Kerry should usurp them on league form? Is that what we're going on? Because their league form hasn't been that much better than Dublin's. Like, I don't see where you're coming from with this Dublin were bad in the league nonsense. It just doesn't make any sense. They lost one game in the National League. They've won 5 All-Irelands in a row. You can dine out on 5 All-Irelands in a row.
Your power rankings have essentially just become the odds that the bookmakers would have if they were opening a book on it.
That would be purely coincidental. I mean, that's purely coincidental. That's the case. And if they're that correct, then, thank you. Thank you for that compliment.
Okay, if that's what you're looking for, essentially, you can look at what it says and go, oh, I've got this as a copy. But there's
nothing copy about this. You've seen these things develop over the last couple of weeks.
I've seen nothing develop. You've had the exact same plan the whole way through. You've taken no evidence of the current situation into account. You've taken none of the fact that, like, Dublin have a new manager, been shorn of loads of experience, and have looked flaky against both Meath and Galway. A Galway team who were hammered out the gate the previous week. And you're like, oh, no, their league form is sensational. They're just behind Kerry, and they're ahead of Kerry because I can't put Kerry top and ever go home. And I'm actually at home at the moment, and I would be terrified that the Healy Rays are going to arrive at my door with burning turf on a pitchfork and say, Owen, you had one job, you had to make us number 2, and you failed. And you're unwilling to face down the wicker men. That's your problem.
You're talking nonsense about Dublin. Let's just put this out there, because this is the foundation of
not Kerry.
That Dublin don't deserve. Like, in any other generation, this Kerry team could be number 1. Like, you're talking about this Dublin team, a change of manager. Yes, they've lost one game. They lost one game in the league. That's it. It was before the pandemic. They've come back after the pandemic. They've won both of their games. They go into the All-Ireland Championship as 5-time All-Ireland winners in the last 5 years. They've won 5 million Leinster Championships in a row. How you can pull them down a peg when they haven't played Kerry, when they haven't played Donegal in recent weeks, and they're the teams that are supposedly chasing the pack.
Or Mayo.
Like, they played, like, the last meaningful game they played against Mayo, and, like, they hammered Mayo last year in an All-Ireland semi-final. Like, I'm just looking
Quick last question. Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to change your mind in Dublin. If Meath, how are Monaghan not beneath them? Because Meath are technically still in the championship. Can Armagh possibly survive in 8th position? And if Cork get hammered by Kerry, do they remain in 9th?
Meath is still in the champ. They haven't played a championship game. They play in the Leinster Championship. Monaghan playing the Ulster Championship. But, like, if Meath are that much better than Monaghan, why didn't they beat him in the league a couple of weeks ago? Like, Tommy Rooney and the Meath Mafia almost had, like, a parade down through the middle of Navan after drawing a game in Division 1. They got 1 point in Division 1. Like, big whoop. They don't deserve to be ahead of Monaghan. Like, I mean, this is not a thing. Like, I'm looking at Monaghan's record. They got 6 points. Meath got 1 point in Division 1. Yeah, Monaghan got knocked out in the championship, but their ranking reflects that. They're not even in, where did I say they are? They're 11th. They're not even in the top 10 anymore. Like, I mean, this is a bad ranking for Monaghan. They're not that bad. They're not below Meath. Not yet, anyway. Let me see a win from Meath. Let me see a meaningful win from Meath before I start putting them into the top 10. They haven't beaten anyone of serious note.
They should both be ahead of Cork until Cork do something.
Why?
Cork got promoted from Division 3. Happy days. Well done. Congratulations. The second most populous county in the country in Division 3.
I'm going to have to stop you there again. I'm sorry. But, like, Cork and Meath, we both saw these teams as the upstarts last year. They both made the Super 8s. Compare their record at that level last year. Cork were so much better than Meath. They actually won a game in the Super 8, believe it or not.
It's been a lot of time since the Super 8s last year. A lot of water under the bridge. A lot of lockdowns have occurred, and the game's moved on. I just think that.
Hold on, yeah, there is that. I'm actually. I actually do need to correct a mistake that I made. They actually didn't win a game in the Super 8s last year. I'll hold my hands up on that. I got carried away with the Cork argument because I know somebody would stop me in my tracks there. I know Cork didn't win a game in the Super 8.
You're trying to just build them up ahead of the Kerry game this week. I meant the Healy Rays at the door have had the impact.
I meant to stop talking after I said they were good in the Super 8 last year because they were good in the Super 8.
Can Armagh survive in 8th position? Should they not be up a bit higher?
A bit higher. Well,
or lower, I don't know. I mean,
the argument about Armagh certainly on social media last week was that they're up too high. I think that they're definitely holding on to 8th position. They weren't great against Derry last week. I expected them to beat Derry by a lot more than they did. We just haven't seen Cork yet. If Cork beat Kerry this weekend, obviously they go up. Monaghan were another team that were chasing Armagh going into this week in the power rankings, and they lost. they've lost an opportunity. I will say Meath are still in with a shout of becoming a top 8 team if they put in an impressive Leinster Championship.
Okay. Kieran Donnelly's been in touch on Twitter to say, surely the game between Galway and Sligo can't be called off, boys. We'll get to that in a minute. And Ger, will you do your study in Cork and stop slating us Kerry folk for expecting the game of the weekend? Well done, Owen, you put him in his box. If Kieran Sheehan was playing, I'd give Cork a chance. Unfortunately, he's injured. And so
they're one player away from beating Kerry?
No, I'd give them a chance. And also, he is an unbelievably special player. Like, this is. I mean, you're probably too young to remember him having the kind of impact that Conor McKenna had on that Tyrone team. But that's what Kieran Sheehan was like when he was playing football for Dublin, for Cork, when Cork were good. So anyway, look, I await this game with bated breath, and I can't wait to see Cork run Kerry ragged for 50 minutes, and then Kerry pull it out by 4 or 5 points in the end. That's what I'm looking forward to. On the Sligo Galway situation, Sligo GA have just released a statement. It seems like it's a bit of a holding statement. They wish to confirm that a number of members of the Sligo football panel have unfortunately returned a positive COVID-19 test. The players in question are in isolation and following a HSE guideline, as are a number of close contacts. The players are doing well. A number of the squad is currently awaiting further test results. Sligo GA are currently liaising with GA officials at Croke Park and Connacht GA. So maybe they can buy a week because it's a semi-final. I'm not sure. We'll see. Dara on YouTube sums it all up. Cutting corners again, Sheehan. That is this week's Power Rankings. Neil Treacy, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are you doing?
The Limerick hurlers have no such worry about Power Rankings. Everybody's rating them 1 and 1, 2 and 3, and nobody's getting a look in at the moment. So, you know. How are you feeling about that, Neil?
Not good.
Doesn't sit.
It's never a good feeling.
Doesn't sit comfortably on the shoulders of.
No, I was sitting there at home yesterday morning listening to Ciarán Carey wax lyrical about just how amazing this current crop of Limerick hurlers are, and as much as I probably think it myself in the back of my head, I've never really been willing to verbalise those thoughts.
That's the most welcome thing that happened yesterday. Ciarán Carey just told the truth. This is how we actually feel about stuff. I was like, yeah, good man, this is great. This is what we want from our GA pundits.
It's just not a natural feeling as a Limerick person to be that confident about your team. You just been stung before a lot of times.
How does it feel to be compared to the 5 in a row dubs?
Not good. Not good at all.
I mean, maybe they could do it.
If someone wants to compare Limerick to the 5 in a row dubs in 5 years' time, if they have won 5 in a row, I'll take that.
Well, is the Kilkenny defeat last year their Donegal Jim McGuinness moment?
When you look, like, potentially it could be. Like, all the signs add up. Like, I mean, they were brilliant at the weekend, excellent against Clare last week. You know, as much as I joke, you probably would certainly have them as the best team in the country at the moment.
By a mile. I can't wait to see them against Kilkenny, because they will feel like they owe Kilkenny a due, and Kilkenny will feel, hang on a second, what was it you said about us? So hopefully we don't get denied that game. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Neil, what's going on in the world?
Well, just to go back on the Sligo statement you mentioned there a couple of moments ago, Sligo GA wishing to confirm that a number of members of the Sligo football panel have tested positive for COVID-19. The players in question, they say, are currently in isolation and following all guidelines, as are a number of close contacts. They say the players are doing well and they're liaising with Croke Park and GA officials. They're due to play Galway this Saturday in the semi-finals of the Connacht Senior Football Championship, but a postponement of that game seems highly unlikely, with the Connacht final due to take place just 8 days later. Meanwhile, Liverpool and Man City can both take a major step towards qualification for the Champions League last 16 this evening. City welcomed Greek side Olympiacos to the Etihad Stadium, with striker Gabriel Jesus possibly available again. He's been out since September with a thigh injury. Liverpool are away to Italian side Atalanta, also going in search of their third win in a row, but the Reds have lost all 3 of their away Champions League games in Italy under manager Jurgen Klopp. Meanwhile, in the Premier League, Leicester City are up to second in the table this morning. They continue their excellent start with a 4-1 win against Leeds last night. Yuri Tielemans found the net twice, with Harvey Barnes and Jamie Vardy also on target, and manager Brendan Rodgers says it was a superb performance.
Leeds obviously have shown what a really good attacking team they are, so you know you've got to defend well, but you also know the space, and I said that before the game, that if you can have that composure and quality to play, you'll get opportunities. So I thought all round it was a brilliant performance. Defensively, tactically, the players were very, very good.
In yesterday's other Premier League game, Fulham picked up their first win of the season. Bobby Reid and Ola Aina scored in a 2-0 win at home to West Brom. That win moves Fulham out of the relegation zone now. In rugby, Leinster and Ulster both continued their flawless starts to the Pro 14 season last night. Jimmy O'Brien, Luke McGrath, Scott Penny and Michael Bent all ran in tries for Leinster as they beat Glasgow with a bonus point 32-19 at Scotstoun. Dan Levy also continued his return from a serious injury with some action off the bench, and head coach Leo Cullen says it was a job well done against a difficult opponent away from home.
Yeah, there was definitely bits in there we didn't quite get right, but overall now we're very pleased with the results. It's a very tough place to come here, and for the most part I thought it was a real good physical performance from our guys as well, so pleased with the win. Good to see another young academy player making his debut as well, so it's quite a positive time of year for us with a lot of young guys coming through.
Ulster also maintained their 100% record with an 11-7 win away to Cardiff. That's now 14 wins from 15 games for the Irish provinces so far in the season. And finally, it was an Irish 1-2 at the Melbourne Cup overnight. Joseph O'Brien trained his second Melbourne Cup champion with Twilight Payment winning at odds of 25-1. Under Jai McNeil, Twilight Payment produced a front-running display to win from Tiger Moth, trained by his father Aidan, into second. However, the race was sadly marred by the death of 2019 Derby hero Anthony Van Dyke after he suffered a fractured fetlock. That's the 7th death of a horse in the race in the last 8 years, Ger.
All right, Neil, thanks for that. Stay tuned to OTBsports.com and the OTB Sports app for more from Neil across the day. Now, every morning this week we're giving you the chance to win the New Ireland shirt. It is the first sponsorless shirt in about 30 years, so you have a feeling that when the new sponsor comes in, they're going to want that very important prime real estate. So now's the time to get your hands on these shirts. All you have to do today to be with a chance of winning is tell us who our mystery voice is.
Every manager around the world gets that. Take a bit of pinch of salt. They should leave the experts to do their job and do their own jobs.
Do their own jobs. 087 9180 180. WhatsApp his name, our name, his name and your name. Don't give us our name, we know our names. So your name, his name. And send that message by WhatsApp to 087 9180 180. It's all thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor of the FAI. Shop the new sponsorless Irish football jersey right now at faishop.com. We'll give you one more chance to enter just after 9 o'clock this morning. Now, we'll get talking the fallout from Ireland's defeat to France at the weekend a little bit later on, but right now we're bringing you the OTBAM interview with Conor Murray. The Irish scrum half joined Owen yesterday afternoon. Enjoy.
Today, Conor Murray has been announced as a new ambassador for Down Syndrome Ireland, and I'm delighted to say that he is with us now. How are you doing, Conor?
I'm very good, yeah. Thanks for having me.
So talk to us a little bit about your new role with Down Syndrome Ireland. I think it's fair to say that you've been well aware of the brilliant work they've done for quite some time now.
Yeah, I suppose just it's coming on board officially now, but I think there's definitely been a link with Down Syndrome Ireland for years. I suppose starting off with my dad through his involvement with the Tour de Munster cycle, and with them being involved with Down Syndrome Ireland for years. Having spent time with a lot of those events, meeting loads of the kids and adults with Down syndrome, and you know, it's definitely something that's close to my heart. And I suppose coming on board officially, being able to promote this 21-day challenge, you know, it just felt right, and hopefully I can do something that helps the charity. I know charities are struggling throughout COVID and all these lockdowns and stuff, so I know people will be asked to do all sorts of challenges over this lockdown number 2. So, you know, all you can do is say your piece and show what it means to you to be part of something like this, and hopefully people get on board.
How did your dad get involved in the first place?
He would have been involved in cycling and triathlons and things like that. So involved with the Tour de Munster from the start, and with them having a long tradition and relationship with Down Syndrome Ireland, would have spent a lot of time with them too. And again, like I said, having been at those events with him as a child, and then you know, growing up through it and meeting these people and seeing the work they do, it's just a natural fit.
Absolutely. It's an amazing thing as well, especially given the way you've been there all along with your father at these sort of things. And like, I think I saw yourself and your father together in a television ad there a few years ago. That bond is obviously quite close, and he's inspiring you to do things off the rugby pitch as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can get caught up in the rugby things an awful lot, and it takes over your your headspace a lot. And I suppose having people like my dad and my family, my mom and sisters there to steer you down the road of doing good things. And sometimes you forget what influence you can have off the pitch. So I've had good people around me, thankfully, throughout my career, and this is just another step in that direction. And again, it's something that's natural. It's not as if some things you might promote. You don't want to do things for the sake of it. This is something that fits properly and you feel quite strongly about. So again, it's, like I said, an easy one to choose.
It's a really interesting point that you make about how it can be hard to focus on the non-rugby things so often, because if you want to be a high achiever, I presume that you've got to have a little bit of tunnel vision half the time, and actually being taken away from that and forcing yourself to remove yourself from that, I presume, could be a difficult thing.
It is, yeah. Like you said, the tunnel vision with the games, training, preparing, all that stuff takes up the majority of your time. So having people that allow you to get out of that headspace and do something productive is obviously good for yourself. To be able to get out of that rugby, that mindset from time to time, because whether it's going good or bad, it's probably good to step out of it and remind yourself that it's just rugby at the end. It is a game at the end of the day, and there's an awful lot more important things going on around the world. So being able to step out of that is really good, and I think it's necessary to maintain a kind of healthy mind, and if you can do it in a good way or a productive way or help organizations like this out, then even better.
When you say that your father and your family are really good at helping you to do that, would you pick up the phone to them after a game, for example, and chat through it, or do you have those sort of conversations with them at all?
Not straight after the game. I think you need a day or two to kind of digest it. Again, depends on the win or loss. I think, when it goes well, it's hopefully, usually they're there in the stadium, and you can head up after games and spend time with them. Obviously, it's a little bit different now, so you have to wait a couple of days, and we're kind of in a bubble at the moment, so the only way to chat to them is over the phone, unfortunately. Again, like many people in the country, it's the only way to communicate with people at the moment. So I think having them there as a sounding board to go through how you're feeling, whether it's a great win or it's a tough loss, I think having family and people around is very important.
One of the things that struck me as well about being involved, from your perspective, with a great organisation like Down Syndrome Ireland, is that there is a sense of positivity with it, which is unchallenged, and kind of it is truly positive. Whereas I presume, again, in a rugby environment, there is a necessary challenging of everybody's standards. There is sometimes negativity associated with being a rugby player for Munster and for Ireland, and the necessary headspace that you need to get yourself into is a little bit different to what you can do with your work with Down Syndrome Ireland, I presume. Yeah, it is. It's really, it can be tough, like you said, with the pressure, and sometimes, most of the time, it's a very good job, and it's really, really enjoyable. But with it comes negativity and comes some stress. So having that outlet or whatever, and seeing people in the organisation, whether it be children with Down syndrome or just the volunteers, just their positivity and the way they see the world, they see it for what it is. Sometimes you get it, like you said, the tunnel vision, getting caught up in what you are doing can seem like the most important thing in the world at the time, and then which it's a good way to be as well. It motivates you to do the best, but it's nice to be able to see it from another point of view and not get too kind of cordoned off in your own little world. On that positivity, would you say that you're generally a positive person? Yeah, thankfully, I will be. Around rugby, we're very lucky to be doing what we do, especially now. I think we're really privileged to be able to go to work, to go to camp, to play games. And that's part of our job. But it's a very lucky position to be in. Now we want to win and things like that. So last week was great. We were privileged to be able to go out. We won against Italy, and it was all great. And this week it was all great until the game. And with that loss, it takes a little bit out of you. But you have to remain kind of your view needs to be well rounded. It's a game of rugby. We lost it for a number of reasons. You need to take it on board, learn from it, and move on. I think earlier in my career, you would have
would have dwelled over it for a lot longer. But now I think you can learn from it a lot better. You're more experienced. You can learn from it quicker, and you can move on. And as long as you feel like you're doing everything you can, then that's a reason to feel positive. If you were cheating yourself and not trying your hardest, then there would be questions in your head about what you're trying to do. But if you've given it your all, it's probably cliche, but if you've given it your all and you prepared as best you can, then it's hard to feel down for too long. The loss hurts. It hurts massively because we could have a trophy today if we had played potentially a small bit better, a few small areas that we could have got better at. But you just go again, I think.
At what point does your personal thought process start to go into full throttle after a game like that on Saturday? Have you considered it yet? Is it taking a step away from it for a couple of days and then getting into it in a little while?
Yeah, we're Monday now. We came home yesterday. Arrived home back to Limerick at around 5 o'clock. Obviously, on the way home, you're thinking about the game. I hadn't watched it. I just chilled out yesterday. We dinner, watched a movie with my girlfriend Joanna, and we just chilled out. We even didn't talk about rugby, just talked about everything else. And then this morning, you wake up a little because it's further away. It's you've had time to process it. So sat down this morning and watched the game back on my laptop and did my own review, kind of see where we went wrong, what could have been better, and that's locked away, and we'll chat about it now when we get up to camp and deal with it. And it's fine margins in sport, so when you win or lose, it's always by fine margins, so that we're not that far away. But yeah, we're disappointed with the way we performed, but we know within our group, within our bubble, that we can be an awful lot better. So that's what's exciting. It wasn't as if we played to our full potential last week. We just played under par, and we hope we deserve to lose because we didn't play that well.
How harsh can you be on yourself when you're doing those notes, as you mentioned there?
Very, very hard. I think you have to be your own worst critic at times. I think you're looking back in the video. You only know truly yourself if you're working as hard as you possibly can, or you could have worked harder in areas. And you just give yourself a true reflection of how you saw yourself playing in the game. And there was good parts. There was parts that could have been better too. So I think if you're someone who kind of brushes over those mistakes, or you don't see those opportunities where you could have done better, then you won't be in the game too long. You have to be like that and try and get better.
Conor, we are out of time. Just a reminder for anybody watching and listening that Conor Murray has today been announced as a new ambassador for Down Syndrome Ireland. And just a reminder as well, Conor, today is the launch of the 21-day fundraising challenge in aid of the charity. Just a quick mention, what is that?
So it's a 21-day challenge where we're just encouraging people to get out consecutively over 21 days and hopefully try and accumulate 100 kilometers in exercise, whatever type of exercise you want: run, walk, wheelchair, jog, cycle, swim, whatever people can do. And you sign up for it through downsyndrome.ie, and it's in aid of an unbelievable cause, an unbelievable organisation. And I think it's a double-sided thing where people are getting out and about and they're exercising, and it's good for them, and in turn it helps the organisation of Down Syndrome massively because they're in big need of it.
Great stuff. Conor Murray, appreciate your time. Thanks a million.
Yeah, for a really good cause as well there. So it is just coming up to 9 o'clock, 8:58 this morning here. If you've just joined us, you're very welcome along to OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show here on all of your OTB channels. You can get us on the OTB Sports app, you can get us on YouTube, on Twitter, Periscope, on Facebook, wherever it is that you want to consume us, we are ready for you there as well. I do want to tell you about what's coming up in the next while, a little bit later on today. The lads are going to be talking a bit more about obviously what's going on in the Champions League tonight, so we'll talk about that for you in just a couple of minutes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the rugby in a moment as well here, Owen. Your take on what happened at the weekend and some of the stuff fallout. It was interesting that Brian O'Driscoll makes the back pages. The debate about Johnny Sexton and his captaincy was something that in particular has been picked up in the aftermath of the game. I don't think they're going to make any change for the captaincy at this point. I think they might review it at the start of the next Six Nations. And to be honest, if Sexton's form is as good as it was in the game, then why would you make the change?
Like, I definitely agree that the timing is going to be the start of next year if any change is going to happen. I think the captaincy should be something that is reviewed regularly. I think you can see the value in having somebody who is your eternal captain, but you can also see the value in that captaincy being something that perhaps isn't set in stone all the time. And with Sexton well into his mid-30s at this point, it probably is something that needs to be up for debate at the start of next year. And like, is it a question about form? Is the captaincy and form, are they completely unlinked, or is there a case to be made that actually Johnny Sexton without the captaincy might be a better player next year? Like, I don't know. Like, do we think that James Ryan, if he goes in as captain, say at the start of the next Six Nations, would he automatically be a better captain? Would he automatically be better communicating with referees? Maybe, and maybe you only find that out by giving him the captaincy. What I do think, and I think, like, just after thinking about this a little bit yesterday, the question is, why are we having this conversation? And it does feel that this conversation is being had as a result of Sexton's reaction to getting taken off on Saturday night. I think I'm fair in saying that. And for me to strip somebody of their captaincy because of being a little bit moody for getting taken off is unfair. Now, I think it's not unfair to make a case that Sexton, for other reasons, shouldn't be captain next year. I think you can absolutely make that case. But if your reasoning is that Sexton was in a bad mood because he got taken off in a big Six Nations game and therefore he shouldn't be captain, I don't think that argument washes.
Okay, counterpoint that it's not just about that, it's about the fact that he didn't take the points at half-time when they went for the corner, and the game management at that point was all about chasing tries when actually it needed to be about winning the game.
That is also a question about him being replaced as out-half, in my opinion. So if James Ryan is captain, is that him telling Sexton put the ball between the posts?
Yeah.
Or is it a conversation between them?
Well, it's a conversation, but ultimately the captain makes the call. So that's a game flow call that the captain has a responsibility to make. Let's hear from two former Ireland captains. So obviously Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll were on last night, Monday Night Rugby, speaking with Joe Malloy, and here they are talking about it. Have a look.
Unfortunately for Ross Byrne, he came on, and for his 15 minutes, he must have made 3 or 4 poor errors. It didn't feel as though there was any fluidity to running the back line. It was all quite static and shipping the pass on, making it easy for the French defence. So I actually thought that Johnny Sexton played a reasonably good game. Considering the lofty expectations we have from him, I thought he was still quite good. That said, I don't think visually it's a good thing to have your captain coming off and shaking his head the way he did, and I'm sure he's regretful of that, and I hope he kind of had a quiet word to his coach and apologises, as Johnny Sexton has struggled to do in the past. I know he's grown as a player, but I think that visually for the rest of the team looking up, and indeed Ross Byrne looking up at the big screen, and it was this prolonged visual of him looking up to the coach's box and shaking his head. As captain, you can't do that. I think you have to be able to park your own disappointment and move on and let the next guy coming in to shake things up. That said, I thought it was a poor tactical decision because of what his replacement subsequently offered.
Yeah, this is such a multifaceted conversation, because you can be critical of Sexton for his behaviour when he gets taken off, but you can also be critical of Andy Farrell for taking him off in the first place. Like, why are you taking him off?
It's not a substitution anybody actually expected at this point. Like, does Sexton need to apologise to Andy Farrell? Do they need to have that clear the air conversation? Maybe they do. Like, I'm not sure. Is Andy Farrell going to be too wound up and is going to be like seeking an apology?
But it's not. Again, like, just to go back to the point I was making yesterday, it's not about Andy Farrell feeling like he's being undermined or whatever. It's that you're the captain and you clearly you don't believe you should be taken off in that point. So therefore, the people who you're supposed to be leading into battle, you're like, no, you guys aren't good enough here. You can't get done what I was about to do out there. That's the implication with the I'm so upset. The whole notion it's not a direct, it's not a commentary on Ross Byrne. Ross Byrne must feel it's commentary on him. Like, in his quiet moments, to his mates, he's been like, is he like, oh no, it's grand, it's fine. I can take that. It's like, well, okay, that's not the best work environment. You're not giving yourself as a group the best chance of succeeding.
You're not giving Ross Byrne possibly the best chance of succeeding by throwing him into that sort of game, though, are you? Like, I mean, it seems
that's not Sexton's call.
I get that, but I mean, if we're going to be critical of Ross Byrne like we are of Johnny Sexton, then you need to assess all the different factors at play with Ross Byrne's performance. First of all,
Ross Byrne didn't play well, we can agree that.
No, he didn't play great, but I would like to see Johnny Sexton actually replaced from the start before you actually make a call on how big the gap is between Ireland's number 1 and number 2 out halves. Is that not fair enough?
Sorry, yeah, but I guess, like, for me, Sexton shouldn't behave like that, and Farrell shouldn't have taken him off. And we should have kicked the points at the end of the first half. Although at the time, I actually think in game flow you have to trust your captain to make the decisions. He makes the call. It goes wrong, but I don't kill him for that. Like, I know the captains were shouting at the TV saying take the points. Fair enough. You know, they've been involved in cup rugby matches way more and won more than us. But I think, like, it's Sexton's mojo is we're going to go big, and we're going to go for your throat when we get the opportunity to. And if they'd scored that try before half-time, completely different game. So sometimes you play to win and you lose badly, and you take the punishment for that. But you can't be dishing out the punishment as the captain.
It's not like we also lost by 3 points, you know? Like, this wasn't a game-swinging decision. And like, obviously, you should be taking them out of the context of the final scoreboard, and every score matters, and who knows how the game would have gone. But chances are, if Ireland had scored 3 points in that situation, Ireland might have been under pressure for the remainder of the half. Like, they then had the ball. I don't know. I just don't think it's as important as a moment in the end when you look at the final scoreline, and you look at the fact that Ireland scored a try late on as well. But like, maybe you should be judging a captain on every single decision he makes. And like, it was clearly the wrong decision in hindsight. I think even at the time it did feel like an unusual call. It was a ballsy call to say the very least. And maybe that's what you want to do as captain. Maybe as captain, you've got a set of circumstances in your mind, and you say the only way you are going to regret anything is if you make the less confident move, if you actually settle for something when you could have got more. That will be the only way I will have a regret. And maybe that's Sexton's mentality. But it should also be up to everybody in the squad to realise that is the mentality, and that is the sort of decision your captain will make.
Yeah.
Like, I think if anybody's going to make that,
it was in character.
It's probably Johnny Sexton.
It was in character. It wasn't something that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe he's just done that. It's like, that's the type of. And look, maybe their analytics show that kicking to the corner results in more points on balance than kicking the penalties do. Maybe he felt like he wasn't going to kick it. I don't know. These are things that we'll never really get the full conversation of, because that's the way those environments work. So, look, I wouldn't be changing captains now, unless the only other alternative is that actually you don't just anoint James Ryan as captain and say, right, you're our captain forever here. Like, you buy yourself some time and you say, we're going to actually rotate captain for the next while, that to take a little bit of the pressure off Sexton. He will be captain 1 in 4 games, but also CJ Stander's form, since he's had significant competition, has been excellent in the last 12 months. And so we're going to make him captain for a game. We're going to make James Ryan captain for a game. We're going to give somebody else the opportunity to captain the team. When Tadhg Furlong comes back, could he be captain?
Well, see, this is the thing. Like, James Ryan and his captaincy feels like a conversation we were having in February, whereas now it feels like the number 1 candidate might actually be Gary Ringrose if he's fully fit. And I wonder if, when he gets back on the pitch, and if he's looking fit and ready come the start of next season, or the start of next year's Six Nations, is there a conversation that then happens that, you know, Ringrose is going to get a bit of game day experience as captain of Ireland, because he has all those attributes. He was brought into the leadership group quite early as a Leinster player. Somebody somewhere has identified Gary Ringrose as a leader beyond his years, and he's at the age now where it's not an anomaly for him to step up to the mantle on that front. I think with James Ryan as well, there is always going to be a close association with Paul O'Connell and how amazing a leader he was. And in fairness, I do think James Ryan does show those leadership qualities. But maybe after kind of a bit more of a turbulent year, the actual assessment of who's going to be the successor to Johnny Sexton, maybe that conversation has changed a little bit, from it being definitely James Ryan to it being a number of different options, and it's not as straightforward as we think.
All right. If anybody wants to give us your view, drop a comment in the YouTube comments, or you can WhatsApp us 0879 180 180. Now, a reminder, of course, if you missed Monday Night Rugby last night with Brian O'Driscoll and Keith Wood, catch the podcast back on the OTB Podcast Network, and we'll also bring you in we'll bring it from 9:30 this morning here on OTB AM. Right, this is your last chance to enter our competition this morning to win the new Ireland jersey. Just tell us, who's this?
Every manager around the world gets that. Take a bit of pinch of salt. They should leave the experts to do their job and do their own jobs.
Yeah, to your own jobs. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It's your last chance to enter. We're picking 2 winners at 9:30 this morning. It's all thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor of the FAI. Shop the new sponsorless Irish football jersey right now at faishop.com. Coming up on OTB Sports Radio today, it's the final episode of the 2020 Six Nations show with Neil Treacy at 11 o'clock. OTB Gold from 1 is Ronnie Delaney. Live dadcast from 3. It's John Giles week on OTB as we celebrate John's 80th birthday later on this week. Special hour coming up at 4 o'clock. At 6, Jerry Eisenberg, the legendary boxing writer, talks about Muhammad Ali. And then obviously the show is live from 7 tonight. We're going to be back after the break with authors Kavitha Davidson and Jessica Luther chatting about their new book. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
I just love playing any sort of ball, team sport. And as you mentioned, like traveling around the world, like it was insane. Like Sydney, New Zealand, San Francisco, Russia, South Africa, America, Canada. Been to some amazing places, and all while playing sport. Like again, growing up as a girl, I never even thought this was a dream.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursa shoot, don't shoot! Oh, what a goal from Fabinho! Wow!
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what do you do? Get a slap?
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Loving Sports When They Don't Love You Back is the fantastic new book by Jessica Luther and Kavitha Davidson. Folks, you're very welcome to the show. Kavitha, I guess it's fair enough to say that this book explains why everybody's relationship with sport should at least be a little bit complicated.
A little bit complicated. I want to preface this by saying that Jessica and I love sports so much. We wouldn't choose to write about this for a living if we didn't, but we see a lot of issues around sports that I think a lot of fans identify with and a lot of fans see as well. And sitting with those issues and those dilemmas while continuing to love the sport is what we were trying to explore in this book.
When did your relationship with sport get a little bit complicated? When did you realize that, hang on, there are some things here that I shouldn't automatically support or I shouldn't automatically love? I actually want to get both of your takes on that. So, Kavitha, do you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, I think, it's always really complicated for me when an athlete is accused of violence against women. I'm a sexual assault survivor myself, so I take that personally. But I think we also manage to use sports and other areas of entertainment and frankly politics as well. Whenever it's famous and rich people that we like who are being accused, we tend to use sports as a way to shield those players from those accusations and to kind of deny the realities of what's going on. So that's an issue that I always that always kind of brings that alarm bell for me. The second one that I think every fan can identify with is taxpayer dollars going to stadiums. Whether or not you're a sports fan, you pay for the stadium. That's just been built there, especially in the US. I'm frankly not quite sure how it works in Ireland, but that's a big deal. And it doesn't usually go to a vote, and it usually takes away from other budgets for your municipalities. And I think that just speaks to our skewed priorities, especially in the US, when most of these teams and leagues can afford to pay for these stadiums on their own.
Right, okay. There's a couple of things there which we'll definitely come back to. Jessica, what about you? What are the things about sport that don't love you back?
Yeah, well, I think lots of girls and women have experienced just feeling like interlopers or outsiders. I can't remember this well enough, but I played middle school basketball, and I'm sure when I was in, how old would I have been? 12 years old, that I understood that there were differences and who was actually an athlete and cared about within middle school. But I'm with Kavitha. I have a lot of trouble with gendered violence within sport, and not that it exists there because it exists everywhere, but how people react to it. I think it's very difficult to watch someone be cheered because they've come back from a suspension for doing harm to someone else, and they get to be cheered because it's sports, and that we have this whole thing around redemption. And so anytime I'm paying attention to women's sports, I mean, you can't be online and say you're a fan of women's sports without people reminding you how how much they don't care about it, that they have to tell you how much they don't care about it. So I feel like that's always something you're bumping up against.
It's interesting when you mentioned the first point there about the terrible things that sports people do. You mentioned the word redemption, and it is very interesting that sport in many ways can mirror real life, that whenever we talk about a comeback, whenever we talk about a team coming back from the brink, it is redemption. And we have this handy knack of also using that for individuals, despite the fact that their redemption should never be possible in the first place.
Well, I'll push back on that a little bit. I do think that redemption is possible. I think that second chances can be warranted. I think that our bar for how you earn that second chance is super low. It's just low across the board, and it's even lower for people that we want to be redeemed. One of the last additions to the book was a few paragraphs after Kobe Bryant died that I added about how personally torn I was as someone who grew up loving Kobe Bryant, like from the bottom of my heart. And I was 14 years old when he was accused of rape, and I didn't want to believe any of it. I made all of the same excuses that we all make about how the woman who accused him was a cleat chaser and why was she in the hotel room and all kinds of things like that. And now as an adult and also a sexual assault survivor myself, I understand that those are mechanisms that we use in order to excuse people that we don't believe are capable of doing things like this. The thing with Kobe, though, is he was about to enter the second act that we've been robbed of. Like, we'll never get to see what Kobe, the supporter of women's sports, and what Kobe, hopefully, the redeemed, apologetic, accused person would have looked like. And that's such a conflict for me. So I do think that impetus to defend that person, it comes very much from within. It comes from within our inability to extricate ourselves from our own personal feelings and personal relationships with that person who's been accused.
And I also think, though, that like what you're talking about, Kavitha, with robbed of the second act, like that's a lot of stuff that he was not doing on the basketball court. And I think what I have trouble with the redemption narrative within sport, specifically around gendered violence, but this could be like anyone who's causing harm off of the pitch or off of the field or the court, is that scoring a goal is not redemption for that harm. Like, scoring a touchdown is not the thing that's redeeming you for the harm that you've done to someone else. And we conflate those all the time within sports rhetoric. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do because it takes away actual accountability and puts being good at sports does not mean that you have somehow been excused from harm that you're doing somewhere else in your life. And we're not good at that. And so, yeah, Kavitha spoke to that perfectly.
I guess as well that there is a natural tolerance for the people who are athletes, I guess, because this is a theme across the entire book of people who have done wrong on various different levels, but who are in different positions within sport. It does seem that, say, people who are running a franchise, people who are at the very top tier of a franchise, as you talk about in chapter 13, I think in the book, rather than those who are actually performing for the team, the players. And it seems that there is a lower tolerance for those at the very top of a franchise than there are for the players. The players are like these demigods. These people are beyond reproach. Is that a fair thing to say?
I don't think so, actually. I think most of the book, except for a couple of chapters and the one about gendered violence being an example, most of the book speaks to systems, and most of those systems start from the top. So, there's a whole chapter about bad team owners, and they're all kinds of reasons.
That's the chapter I'm referring to. Yeah, sorry, chapter 9, actually.
Right. I have no idea which chapter is which.
Me either. I was like,
which one was 13? Yeah. Bad team owners, when it comes to assembling a roster, or like I said, getting taxpayer dollars to pay for their stadiums when they are all billionaires here. Putting out racist mascots and team names and logos, putting out statements that are not supporting their LGBTQ plus fans. Like, all of these things kind of start from the top. And a lot of the things that we're talking about actually are trying to get fans to see athletes themselves as humans and as workers, because they are doing a job here, especially in the United States. This is their job. And I think that fans often forget that. They get mad when players leave to other teams because they haven't been loyal. But the reality is those team owners and that team management will never be loyal to that player unless they have something to continue to give. And so it should work both ways. And we're trying to get people to see how these systems work, how the owners at the top are, management. When you're talking about labor versus management, especially in the United States, we have such a fraught history, a fraught relationship, a fraught labor relationship in the way that we relate to them. But we're trying to get people to see that these are systems that very much reinforce the way that we think about these economic priorities and the way that we think about these athletes as, having to go out on a field to play a game for our entertainment instead of what they are, which is workers who are doing a job.
That's really true. I guess my wrong take there was this idea that you can, as you say, Jessica, score a goal and redeem yourself. It does seem that there's more vociferous, not hate, but certainly distaste towards owners, to use that terrible phrase, of sports teams, that they have less redemptive ability. They can't score as many points in a game or whatever. But obviously that's wide of the mark that they are similarly judged in American sports circles.
Yeah, well, I think you have to be a very good sports star in order for that redemption narrative to work in a specific way. I mean, we saw that, especially here in the U.S. with Ray Rice, which is a very famous case where we all saw the video, sadly, of him hitting his wife, and it just so happened to pair up with the fact that he was declining on the field. So the Baltimore Ravens weren't going to go to bat for him. So it does matter. Like, they do have to be a certain level of useful on the field, and then they're given that opportunity. And I think, we have there's a way that we hate team owners, and we like to talk about that, but there, as like Kavitha was saying, within a system, there's no accountability for them. And we do, because of capitalism and the way that it works in our brains, we tend to, and I also think racism is at play here. The fact that a lot of these owners are white and a lot of the stars, especially here in the US that we're talking about, are black and brown. There's a way that fans imagine themselves as ownership rather than the athletes themselves. They want, like, in their dreams, they wish they could be those athletes, but it makes a lot more sense for them to imagine themselves as owners. And so there's a lot of forgiveness there and excuse making. And then, of course, systems are always going to protect the people at the top. So even if they do like in the NBA, Donald Sterling, we knew for decades, Kavitha wrote she wrote that part of the book and really lays out how well we knew that this man was a racist person. And it just took so much because the system was able to coddle him for a really long time. And I guess what I'm saying is it's nice to have money.
And he ended up making $2 billion from that.
Made a ton of money off of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that point about fans seeing themselves as owners is a really interesting one. And I guess that
we now have fantasy sports, right? Which is we even have an entire infrastructure set up to make people feel that way.
It's very true. And I do wonder as well, does that tie in a little bit? I know that you talk about Wilma Rudolph at the 1960 Olympics, and you talk about her homecoming, which was due to be segregated. And I guess at that point, well, it's still a case now, but at that point it was particularly hammered home that the public of the United States saw athletes as theirs, as, they expect them to perform for them, and they will love them as long as they don't get political or as long as they don't upset them. Does that feed into the same notion of fans seeing themselves as owners somewhat at the point you were just making there, Jessica?
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Yeah, I think absolutely it does. And again, I'll just point back, I think race matters. I think it's much more difficult for a Colin Kaepernick, a black quarterback, to speak out, the WNBA being 80% black and speaking out. I mean, I think that's always going to play a huge role. But also, I do think the fact that most of the time fans relate to these teams from the top down, we've all done it, and this is a really benign version of it. I do it all the time, where I will be talking about a team that I love, and I'll say "we" as if I have anything to do with it. We are gonna win. There is this ownership feeling that's tied into your identity. But I do think it puts us more in the perspective of ownership rather than the athlete themselves, which is why, as Kavitha was mentioning, we felt it was important to remind people constantly that these are human beings, that these are laborers.
Who are constantly fighting for labor rights, for unionization, and especially here this past summer, we saw college athletes try to, push for a union, which is something that, hopefully they'll continue to build that fight on. I think when you look at the way that some fans talk about how athletes get paid, how much they get paid, especially when they sign new contracts. It's always, they're greedy, or they're only in it for the money, or they held out to maximize their salary, which any one of us would do in our jobs. But it's just because there's this notion that because they play a game, that they don't deserve to make as much money as they do, while the owners are these billionaire businessmen that just especially here, again, I'll say in this country, we have this notion that people who have made a lot of money have earned it, and people who are workers have done something wrong. There's this idea of meritocracy, and that's a fallacy in a lot of ways. And it also just belies the notion that these athletes, from the time they are probably 7 or 8 years old, sacrifice and work in order to get to the level that they can make the kind of money that they do. And even when they're in college, more than half of college athletes in basketball and football especially think they're going to make it to the pros, and it's less than 2% that actually does that. So you think about what it takes to actually get to this level. Fans never really, I shouldn't say never, not to paint all fans with a broad brush, but fans often have a hard time accepting just how much they put into this. And I think that a lot of that, frankly, is that we armchair quarterback. We wish we were they, and we're just not.
Yeah, and I would say sports media plays a huge role in that too. I mean, this sort of combative talking head argument style that a lot of sports media, they're doing that work on television and on sports radio that Kavitha is talking about. Like, they do that work for the fan.
Extracting nuance as much as possible, because with nuance, you don't actually get to allow that fandom to play out on television, and therefore the ratings will go, and without nuance, you can't actually have any intelligent debate. I guess every part of this loses when you have this being injected with the oxygen from those sort of shows that you refer to there.
Yeah, I mean, and I always kind of bring this up. Americans are really very black and white about how we look at a lot of things, but especially sports, right? I mean, we cannot handle the idea of a scoreless draw. It's just not a thing that's in our conception, right? So, sports are very black and white in that way. There's a winner or a loser. Whenever someone starts to create an argument, what do they say? They tell you to look at the scoreboard, right? And the fact is, with all of these dilemmas that we're talking about in the book, none of them are really black and white. There's no right or wrong answer. It's not our job to tell a fan how to feel about any of these issues. And by the same token, there's no one solution. And one of the takeaways from this book is that sometimes you just have to sit in the discomfort. You have to sit in that gray area and have that conversation and be okay with the fact that you might not settle on a solution here or there, that there isn't necessarily a good or a bad when it comes to a lot of these things. And that's true in society too.
OTB AM.
That's part one of a two-part chat. The second part includes a conversation on doping and women in sport. That was Kavitha Davidson and Jessica Luther with Owen talking about their new book, Loving Sports When They Don't Love You Back, Dilemmas of the Modern Sports Fan. And if you want to comment on that or anything else that we've had in the show this morning, 0879 180 180 is the number. Our mystery voice this morning.
Every manager around the world gets that. Take a bit of pinch of salt. They should leave the experts to do their job and do their own jobs.
Do their own jobs. This was in an interview with Jimmy McGee for the old aircom.net channel when Aircom were the sponsors. It must have been 06. It was just before the San Marino game. And Jimmy was like, you're on a hiding to nothing. You beat these guys 7 and everybody goes, they were useless. You only beat them 1 or 2 and it's like, you only beat them 1 or 2. And did we beat them 1-0? Did we beat them 2-1? I don't remember. Did they score against us? I think they scored against us. Is this the game where the guy who's just about to break the record for appearances has had to sue San Marino to get to play? Because he was pictured on Twitter this week. Have I got this right? He was pictured on Twitter scoring with Kev in the background going, I think we beat them 2-1 with an injury time goal.
Yeah, well, Stephen Ireland obviously, wasn't it, that scored the injury time goal?
That was San Marino. Am I right? It can't be, can it?
You're making me doubt myself here. But as I'm Googling frantically here, the lawsuit, I didn't actually see that. Did that only get settled last week?
Yeah, 2-1. Like San Marino, Stephen Ireland, last minute winner. Right. I might be mixing up my... but he was playing in that game and he wanted like 140 something to cap. So congratulations to, you know who that was, did you say?
Me? Oh, obviously Jose Mourinho.
Caoimhe Gilmartin and Colin O'Flaherty both knew that was Steve Staunton. So you both won the brand new Irish football jersey. We will be in touch. Yes, I am right. That's my correct memory of that game. So you're on a hiding to nothing, Steve. If you scrape a 2-1 win, everybody will say something. But if you want to see what a softball interview looks like, go and dig that one up on YouTube. We're live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Tomorrow morning from 7:30, Champions League reaction. Our interview with Wexford hurler Lee Chin and the tight five with Neil Treacy will give you another chance to win a brand new Irish football jersey. At 11 today, it is a Six Nations wrap-up show with Neil Treacy. The entire duration of the Six Nations, as long as this Six Nations has been, which has been fairly much interminable, the final show wraps up today with Neil at 11 o'clock on all our social channels. And we're going to bring you this. It is Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll in great form last night, talking with Joe about Ireland's defeat at the weekend to France. Lots for them to get their teeth stuck into, and they get stuck into it properly here. So stay tuned, sit back, relax and enjoy half an hour in the company of Keith Wood, Brian O'Driscoll and first John Malloy.
That means France have finished second in the championship. They're level on points with England. That is their best finish in 8 years. For Ireland, they finish up in third. We have with us former Irish captains Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll. Gents, you're both very welcome. Keith, in an even-numbered year, 2 away games in London and Paris, 2 defeats, 3 wins at home. That's about par?
Yeah, it could be about par. I think when you have a change of coach and maybe the end of the road for some players from the last World Cup and after World Cup, you'd still want a little bit more, and I think you'd like more out of the game on Saturday. So I don't think the players or the coaches will be happy with it. I think we could have hoped for something more. We got soundly and roundly beaten in the spring by England. We were close enough on Saturday, even though we didn't quite hit our straps at all. So, and there was an awful lot to work on after the game on Saturday, and yet we were not that far away at times. But for whatever reason, we seemed to be a little bit off the mark for a while, and some of our players didn't play up to scratch. So, look, you have to be playing at the top of your game to win in Paris, that's for certain, and I don't think we were there on Saturday.
Agree with that, Brian?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. You look over the course of the last 30 or 40 years, with the success or limited success we have had in Paris, when we have gone well, we have been very, very good. So in 2000, obviously, probably the standout performance from an Irish team. Again in 14, and even though we didn't play brilliantly for the Grand Slam year a couple of seasons ago, we stayed in the game, and that's what you need to do. And that's why even, at half-time, if we could have been 1 point down instead of 4, it felt as though you were in it, you're in it. And you're never going to beat France in the first 50 or 60 minutes in Paris. That doesn't happen to any team travelling there. So it's going to be a 78th, 79th minute, and you just have to stay in the mix. And unfortunately, we just ran out a bit of steam. Our impact from the bench, I think, wasn't effective enough to be able to pick up the performance in the last 15 or 20 minutes. And I think, the scoreline probably flatters us a little bit, I have to say, only 8-point differential, but some green shoots as well. So there's kind of a myriad of different emotions that come from the game.
So you think that decision to turn down the 3 points before halftime, even though it's been defended by Johnny Sexton, been defended by Andy Farrell, that was a mistake?
Listen, each to their own, and Ireland have had a good bit of success with that. I just couldn't understand the thinking behind it. When obviously tries weren't, the try bonus wasn't important. It was about getting the game won. And yes, it was 6 points, but first of all, just think about winning it first and foremost, and scorelines can kind of take care of themselves. And when you're not chasing tries, you just have to stay in touch. And games like that are all about momentum and trying to turn the screw a little bit. And the difference between France holding Ireland out at the end of at the first half and going in with great energy and enthusiasm and feeling they're on the front foot versus our feeling was so vast. If you could have knocked over that conversion or that penalty, you're 1 point behind. The pep is in your step, and Ireland hadn't done a huge amount, to be honest with you. They hadn't taken a huge amount of chances, but yet they were right in the mix. So I think it was, for me, I saw Johnny Sexton refer to it as a brave call. I don't know if I would have used that exact description, but like I said, they've done well with it in the past, but sometimes it eventually does catch up with you if you chase that too hard.
First half, Keith, 4 points down, could have been one, as we've just discussed. France really, I mean, probably pretty much close to just two really decent moments. The Fico dance down the left-hand side for the first try, and then the Stockdale mistake ultimately for the second try. Like, they were not very good value for a 4-point lead after the first half. Ireland did a lot of good things.
Ireland did a lot of good things. Ireland had the ball for a huge amount of the game. Whether they did an awful lot of good things is another question. But
okay, so you don't. They had the ball. You don't think they did a lot of good things in the first half?
No, we had the ball for a large part of it. We didn't use it particularly well, and we obviously didn't, because we didn't get the scores that you would have wanted. So I'd agree with Brian that I was shouting at the telly, kick the points. That doesn't mean the decision, maybe it does mean the decision was wrong, but I wouldn't have called for that decision. I do believe that the guys in the field have to make that call. They have to feel and understand where the energy is. They took the view that they'd be able to get over from it. I don't know that we'd shown that at that stage. We were holding on to the ball, but we weren't threatening anywhere near as much. We were almost getting there, but we were a bit sloppy, so we hadn't shown that could have been the case. I thought getting in at 1 point down is a good fill-up, and you can say, okay, we've done that, let's start again. France were trying an awful lot. But they tried a bit, and the bits they tried, they succeeded with. They played very well. They're not under pressure because of the manner in which France play in the back line. An awful lot of it is 7, 8, 9, 10 yards behind the gain line. I'd be interested to see what Brian says on that. But that puts you under a different type of pressure, because you can't put that big press defence on because they're so far back. You can sidestep it very easily, which is actually what happened for Fico's run down the side. Johnny Sexton rushed out of the line to make the hit, missed the hit, and suddenly we are exposed, and you have a tight head prop out on the wing. He's never going to catch Gael Fico. So I think they just plotted their own way. They were grinding us down, even though they weren't doing a huge amount. They have a very big set of forwards. They were taking and exacting a toll on the players all the time, even without doing a huge amount. We were fighting really hard to stand still almost.
Okay, and it did feel like there was a degree of tiredness creeping into the Irish performance in the second half, Keith. So that might be the reason.
I think there is a bit of tiredness that goes in there too, but I also, the ball was greasy. I thought we started losing a little bit of confidence. They were getting great comfort with balls along the ground or balls over the top. Ireland were having to go back and were struggling, and suddenly giving up an easy score after about 4 minutes in the second half. That takes an awful lot away from a team very quickly.
Brian, on Keith's point about Ireland not doing enough with the ball in the first half, do you want to come in on that?
To be honest with you, it wasn't that they created a huge amount to still be in the game, but neither did France for their two scores, as you've touched on. I could see some of the ambitions, some of the ideas, but it just felt that their timing was off, that the timings of runs were poor, the quality of pass wasn't right there. And it didn't feel like, as much as we were putting a lot of pressure because we had possession and territory, it didn't feel as though, we left lots of obvious scores out there. I think there was a couple of other try-scoring opportunities in the second half that were left out there all right, but it felt as though it was a bit of an arm wrestle and that we were just hanging in there. And the annoying thing with arm wrestles is when you work so hard, to stay in it, and then you cough up two scores, against the run of play, and all of a sudden you're behind. It's very deflating. There is one other thing, just before we move on from the final, that decision not to kick the 3 points. I do think that it was a very poor decision from Wayne Barnes, the penalty from Dylan Cretin, when the turnover at the very end that ultimately culminated in half time. He was on his knee and he had 2 goes at the ball with his hands on the ground. So straight away, that's a penalty to us, not the other way around. And I do think that Johnny Sexton kicks that penalty instead when it's under the sticks. They've had 1 go at the corner. They haven't had success. Another one almost in front of the sticks. I think he knocks that over, and that does put a little bit of a different reflection on things going into half-time. So I don't think we were helped out in that regard by Mr. Barnes.
Okay. We'll come on to the tries that Ireland conceded in a moment and Stockdale and all of that stuff, but just to stick with Ireland attack for a moment. So Keith, 56 minutes and 66 minutes, 2 lineouts in the French 22, both lost. That feels like just unacceptable. And then the handling skills in particular in that second half seemed to desert them. 14 handling mistakes made by Irish players across the 80 minutes, but it felt like a lot of them were in that second half.
Yeah, there were a lot in the second half. Look, I thought it was quite a surreal game to watch. We know that Stade de France is a cauldron. It's great noise, incredibly intimidating. It was eerie on Saturday, and look, it's the pressure in playing for a competition. That's where people want to go and play. I think our lineout has suffered. We miss Devon Toner, and we miss that certainty that he gives because, and we need to get over that pretty quickly because Devon is pretty much at the end of his career or nearing the end of his career, and we need to get over it. And I do think at times not having a full third jumper, and I accept the fact that Peter Manny was on the bench, but that gives a bit of additional elements. But if we're not picking Devon Toner, we need to make certain we have an out-and-out jumper at the tail, because we do need it. And I know that sounds like an excuse, and it is an excuse, but it's just an additional problem that you have to deal with when you're under pressure, and you've got 2 guys that have played not huge amounts of international rugby. It is a huge pressure situation for us, and I don't know, our line-out then just didn't seem to function properly, and you want it to work really well inside there. I've been in that position and I've missed those throws. It's a lonely place to be. It's pretty horrible, but we were getting we were compounding error upon error. So we would knock the ball on, we'd work really hard to get it back, we'd get it back, we'd get a penalty, we'd kick in the corner, and then we'd lose the line out, and then we'd knock on the next ball, and then they'd kick it down the field and score a try, and so everything that seemed to could go wrong did go wrong.
Brian, this team have broken...
Even when you look at when Boutier was yellow carded and we kicked to the corner, you wonder about the line-out calling, and I think you're right. I think that the lack of experience is a little bit telling at the moment, and it just shows what a good line-out operator does offer your team. But when they threw to 2 and straight away they're driven into touch, it's the one place on a line-out drive, even if you're struggling for possession, you've got to be willing to be a little bit brave to set yourself up for a potential 7-pointer. That is the dream opportunity for any opposition, to throw the ball to 2. They just pile in from back to front and just force you to the touchline, and they managed to get a turnover. Now, we came down again and managed to eke out a scrum and got our score, but it wasn't from that actual penalty kick. And I think you've got to be clever and understanding and know that teams will offer you 2, but you've got to be brave and go to 4 to make sure that you set up properly and give yourself a good chance of getting that line-out drive.
I was going to put the point to you, Brian, as well on the handling errors and on the basic mistakes. Post-2018, this team had broken habit with everything which went before, where they seemed to just make so few errors, be it Twickenham, be it the Principality last year, be it the World Cup, be it what we saw on Saturday. Really good players are making very basic mistakes, and it's become a bit of a trend.
Yeah, it is. And I was just thinking about Joe Schmidt watching this from New Zealand and how he would have been apoplectic at the amount of turnover of ball and how players didn't look after it. Look after it in contact, look after it with ball handling, look after the quality of pass. I just think the standards have dipped a little bit. And maybe they're trying to play, and the next evolution of this is obvious of what they're trying to do and break away from maybe the last year or 6 months of the Joe regime. And I think the players want to go and do that. But you can't forget your basic skills. And that's what Joe Schmidt teams were excellent at doing. They were very accurate at the ruck. They owned the ball when they got tackled on the ground. We referred to it a good few times about the 60% man of fighting on the ground. It felt as though there was very little body fight. It felt as though there was a concession to being knocked down, and there was no real enthusiasm for getting long body and pushing the ball back. And I counted 3 or 4 occasions that balls were spilled or shot out of rucks just because players didn't take ownership of making sure that there was a marker for their 2 ruckers to clear over and give them a target. And then the silly, ball handling, that's just lack of concentration. I know it was a greasy surface and a wet ball, but they seemed to be managing okay, the French did, and it just felt as though their skill level was superior than ours at the weekend.
Johnny Sexton, Brian, how did he play? Was it the right call to take him off?
I thought I've read a good bit of stuff online, and I think lots of people have, certainly from my perspective, didn't get the 65 minutes that he played. I thought he played quite well, and you got to remember, Johnny Sexton is comfortably still our number 10, and that in itself, there lies an issue. If we're still relying on a 35-year-old out half, as great as Johnny Sexton has been, and I know that there's been issues with, with Joey Carberry, obviously, Paddy Jackson a few years ago, maybe he would have made the progression too, but hasn't for obvious reasons. We are in a real predicament from the number 10 position because Johnny Sexton is coming to the winter of his career, and he's not the vintage years of a couple of seasons ago, but he is still very much the man in possession. And I think he offers the most without a shadow of a doubt. I think, unfortunately for Ross Byrne, he came on, and for his 15 minutes, he must have made 3 or 4 poor errors. It didn't feel as though there was any fluidity to running the back line. It was all quite static and shipping the pass on, making it easy for the French defence. So I actually thought that Johnny Sexton played a reasonably good game. Considering the lofty expectations we have from him, I thought he was still quite good. That said, I don't think visually it's a good thing to have your captain coming off and shaking his head the way he did. And I'm sure he's regretful of that, and I hope he kind of had a quiet word to his coach and apologises, as Johnny Sexton has struggled to do in the past. I know he's grown as a player, but I think that visually for the rest of the team looking up, and indeed Ross Byrne looking up at the big screen, and it was this prolonged visual of him looking up to the coach's box and shaking his head. As captain, you can't do that. I think you have to be able to park your own disappointment and move on and let the next guy coming in to shake things up. That said, I thought it was a poor tactical decision because of what his replacement subsequently offered.
Because, Keith, what Johnny Sexton was experiencing was a perfectly natural reaction, of course. He's shaking his head, but he knows there's a camera on him, and then he glances up at the big screen and knows that he's on the big screen and doubles down with his reaction.
Yeah, he can. Look, you might get away with it as a player. You can't as a captain. And he has to lead with his body language. He has to lead with his performance. He has to lead with the respect that he has for his coach. And anyway, for me, I actually wouldn't have taken him off. I would have said that he was the player that may have been able to pull something magical out in the next 10 or 15 minutes. And I would have left him on. I understand the frustration, but it was a dreadful look. Just touching on Brian's point, he is the best 10 we have. We've seen other players trying to come in and try and do something as well. Ross Byrne coming in at the weekend didn't show enough. I thought he showed about 6 or 7 weeks ago in one of the matches where he came in, he started taking the ball to the line. I said, wow, if he does that, he has a chance to push on. And now this was a big game and he didn't push on. So are we going to go and look at other options apart from that? Because if he's not going to be the man to try and lead us over the line, and if Johnny is 35 and will not be the future, I mean, I know he wants to play till he's 40, but we really want the Johnny Sexton of 2 or 3 years ago, so.
But isn't the predicament then, Brian, if you're both in agreement that he is currently the best, and you're both in agreement that it's not a good thing to have a 38-year-old at the 2023 World Cup as your starting 10, I mean, someone texted in earlier and said, well, should we, just leave Sexton and, you know, build for 2023. The difficulty would strike me, unless you've identified who that player is that's going to lead Ireland in 2023, you don't know who to invest in. So you might as well stick with Sexton if he's still the best.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and you know, for me, the limited bit that I have seen of him, I don't know why is Harry Byrne not getting more game time with Leinster? Why is Ross Byrne continually, if he's heir to the throne ultimately, why is Ross Byrne continually sitting on the bench behind Johnny Sexton for Leinster and Ireland? So I'd love to know what, you know, I know Andy Farrell does like Harry Byrne, but he's got to get game time for his provincial team to be able to ultimately make that progression into international honours. Like, the gulf is substantial still. It really is. Right. And I'm, you know, Ross Byrne has had it tough a couple of times because he played in that England game over in Twickenham where our pack got eaten before the World Cup and he was on the back foot. He's come on to a bit of a thankless challenge this time round to try and make something happen, and maybe he tried to overplay things and as a result, you know, made some mistakes. But I think if you look at the other provincial setups, Billy Burns and Ian Madigan, Jack Carty over in the West, like, it's a huge investment, and I think it's a big risk in the short term. You know, you're out half a pivotal position to invest in those guys and maybe get it wrong after 6 months or a year. And then do you go back to Johnny Sexton there, or do you go to the next person? So I think at the moment I'd be staying with Johnny Sexton because I do think he offers way more than the other guys currently.
Yeah, I just remember back near the end of my time, you might remember this, Trico, for Claw and Mick Galway. They were kind of over the hill, or on the point of being over the hill, and Eddie O'Sullivan said to them, lads, I just want you to be able to give me A, B, C, D, and if you do that, we let you go out on your terms. And part of what they had to do was to bring along the guys that were coming after them and to try and help and put the arm around the shoulder and be leaders and mentors for the guys that were in the team, take some of the flack off them. Is that a role that you could possibly see for someone like Johnny Sexton? If you say, Johnny, we need to milk the last out of you for the next number of years, we need you to bring on the heir apparent, be it Harry Byrne, I don't know who else is in there. Is Kieran Frawley, does he get a chance or an opportunity? I don't know, but is that something that you could see Johnny doing, or is his drive still too much to be number one, or can he do both?
I think that's a really important factor. I think he's got too great a drive, and I think he's still got way too great a self-belief to be, you know, packing it in and feeling as though now there's a different role and expectation from me to try and impart my knowledge, where he still has that selfish buzz in him that he wants to be able to still be Ireland number 10. Also, the fact that he's captain, an honour that, you know, as he's, you know, properly humbled to have been bestowed on him. So he wants to hold on to that for as long as he possibly can. And I definitely feel as though he thinks in his head, with some of his performances over the last year, maybe they've been a bit patchy, but that, you know, he's right too in his thinking that he still warrants that starting berth. And, you know, as things lie, it's very hard to see the progression of the next out half over the course of the next 3 years to being an out half that can guide Ireland to a World Cup semi-final from the batch of players that we have. And that's maybe being brutally honest, but I think that's the reality of where we are currently. And, you know, people will not give Andy Farrell, cut him slack on, you know, performances and results in the short term for the long-term game. They will not do that. And so he has to hedge his bets. And at the moment, he's hedging his bets with Johnny Sexton.
Keith, just one last one on Sexton. It strikes me Andy Farrell created a difficult situation for himself by giving the captaincy to Sexton. If he hadn't given the captaincy to Sexton, Sexton would still be a leader and a huge voice in that team. Now, and not least possibly because of the reaction when he was substituted and just the general disappointment maybe with Saturday's performance, Sexton's captaincy is up for discussion. That's now an extra problem for Andy Farrell to try and sort out when he takes that off him.
It is a bit, but he also said at the start, I'm doing it by case basis, competition by competition basis.
I know, but you're still sitting down with Johnny, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I know that, but you're going to do it anyway. I think he was hoping that he might be able to get more of the composure that he might want from his 10. Right. And, you know, I thought Johnny had been losing his composure a little bit beforehand, and actually I thought he's he's captained very well. I think he's done an awful lot of things really, really well.
Yeah.
It does maybe make for an awkward couple of conversations, but that's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Brian, Jacob Stockdale then?
Yeah, a very mixed bag. And when I looked through the game today, I decided that I wanted to get a clear understanding as to the good, bad, and indifferent. So I marked down all of his good moments, all his bad moments, and I found there was only one neutral moment that wasn't worth talking about. And the issue is there's the balance, and the ratio doesn't favour the good side substantially enough for international standard fullback. Now, he did some brilliant things as well, and that's not to take away from that. And this isn't about bashing Jacob Stockdale. We all know what he's capable of doing in an Irish jersey. He was outrageous and he broke onto the scene, and he has set those very lofty standards. And he's had a dip in form, and he's had a dip in confidence, and it doesn't feel like he's back to the levels he was at a couple of years ago. The issue is that some of his errors feel like concentration issues, and he was one of the guilty parties on a guy turning ball over on the ground, not fighting for body position and those long reach, and those are non-negotiables. They're things that just have to be part of your game and part of your makeup. So I think his rocket launcher, to talk about the good stuff, I think the rocket launcher of a left boot that he has, I thought he kicked extremely well. He must have kicked one ball 70 metres down the pitch, and it is a lovely thing to have a right-left foot option, and having a left foot full back, as we've seen with Rob Kearney for years, is a real plus. I thought he caught a lot of balls pretty well, most of them uncontested. He tried to counter-attack, turning some messy ball into go forward with pretty good success. But then when you have bad moments, you can't let them be try-scoring opportunities. And the spill ball for the penalty try, there was a grubber kick that he had to go back and chase down a minute before he gave away the penalty try one. And I don't know how Wayne Barnes didn't see that as a knock-on, even though he had his back to his own try line. So there are these moments that you can't have that high error count from your full back. Spill balls as well, laid on, a ball thrown inside to him in his own 22, just in his breadbasket and spilled, and that led to the scrum that led to the Vakatawa try. So these moments are all cumulative, and again, these are the sort of things that would get you off a Joe Schmidt team very quickly. Right. So I think for me, he needs to get his confidence back and go back to what he's comfortable with on the wing. And I think maybe we've tried a couple of games with a mixture of success. We can see what he's capable of doing in counter-attack against Italy, but Italy are not France, and Italy are not England, and Italy are not Wales. So I feel as though we need to go and build his confidence back up again on the wing. But now he's got some potential newcomers breathing down his neck as well, in the likes of James Lowe. So it's an interesting month ahead for Jacob Stockdale.
Yeah, and who would you stick in at full-back then?
I think Hugo Keenan's the obvious choice. Okay. I just feel Andrew Conway, is very good in the air, but I do think the extra little bit of height from Hugo Keenan, I think he is good in the air. I think he's got a very natural right foot boot. I think he's got an ability, we talked previously about these high-speed meters, how he's capable of running fast for long periods. Incredible fitness, and I think they all take their toll on defensive teams in the last 15 or 20 minutes of games, and I just feel as though he has the capability of creating a little bit of spark as well as doing all the basics really well too. His was a high energy performance. He wasn't without error himself, but I just feel as though he looks a little bit more comfortable when the ball is going into the backfield. You don't kind of panic, and I'm sure the rest of the team are looking around going, okay, it's Hugo's got the ball. I think with Jacob, you just don't know what you're going to get on any given occasion.
OTB AM
with Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen,